All right, it is indeed time for the Fluffle to assemble. Welcome, one and all, to the Rabyd Atheist Show. I'm your host, Ed Rabyd, a former pastor turned atheist, now compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to the Rabyd Atheist Show. Welcome to all of you in the Rabyd Nation, whether you are a paid-for citizen or whether you are just a tourist who's subscribed, or whether you're just somebody looking across the border, wondering whether or not to emigrate to such a wonderful nation as the Rabyd Nation. Welcome, one and all. Welcome to everybody. And welcome to where I started on Tuesday reviewing Paulogia's response to Inspired Philosophies' response to Paulogia's response to Inspired Philosophies' original video. There's a lot of responses in this, thus the thumbnail. So I'm kind of looking at it. I'm reviewing it. I'm not responding. I'm reviewing. I just want to make that abundantly clear. There's a difference. So there we go. That's what we'll be doing today. We got a little ways into it, but I figured Paul's video is like an hour and a half, and I wanted to get at least a half hour of it done. So yeah, me too. That's going to be the fun part. We're all lost. Oh my gosh, there we go. But thanks everybody for being here. A few announcements there. Of course, there's a goal in chat. Help keeps my stream motoring along and my channel motoring along. Appreciate every donation. If we reach the goal, I will wear whatever hat has been chosen by the whole. And in Friday, the Holy Bunny hat is in effect. So you can get some dogma by Fangs if you trick the host. So there you go. There you go. See, because that's part of the canon, by the way, folks. Like, you have to trick the host. You have to be in true Fangs fashion. You have to trick the host in such a way that he gives you dogma about Fangs. So that's how that works. But there's all kinds of parts to the ritual. The first is the monetary donation part. So there you go. There you go. There you go. Yes, there we go. Yes, it is. Very much so. I'm totally in the spirit of Fangs today. I really am. I am. Also, there's, of course, a link to the Discord, the Fluffle of Fangs, if you're looking for a community to be a part of. Also, I want to remind everybody of our continued GoFundMe for Earl and her journey back to health and stability. We've already taken a few steps on that journey, so I know she's visiting some of the people that she loves and cares for. So she went and stayed some time with her parents and, and getting some psychological rebuilding of stability there, I guess. So there you go. There you go. So there you go. So just if you can check that out, we would appreciate it. We're actually in a good spot right now where she's getting ready to get consultation and a few other things. So we're good there. Let's see, any other announcements? I don't think so. So let's see who's here. Allegedly Fred is allegedly here. Triple E was here. Majestic Beck is here. The Elder Gods have sent their representative and emissary. Always happy to see them. Evan is here. Dragon Rider's here to see you as well. Michael's here. That's good. Paul is here. Yes, resist is the new emoji. Yes. Here, let me see here. Yeah, it's right here. There we go. I'll put it in chat. I've got a lot of things queued up today, so there you go. But yes, the resist is a new one, very much so. Yes, you have Judge Fangs in there too. You have a bunch of them. So there you go. Yeah, see, I can't post this on. Well, there you go. There is a resist emoji. So there is. And as if on cue, when we're talking about her stuff, the wonderful, lovely, smart, beautiful, intelligent, lap in which our Lord naps, I killed Earl. One of the smartest women I know. So there she is. Take a bow. Curtsy. Actually, curtsy would be more proper for a Southern belle. So there you go. All right, I think that's it. So let's. I got. Paul had done his introductions. He had also dealt with two meta issues about the whole response to him. His response to Inspired Philosophies 6.25 hour magnum opus. We're not doing page count like Habermas anymore. We're doing hours. And he had dealt with two overarching issues, and now he's about to deal. I'm going to play about 5 seconds leading up to the third issue that he was going to deal with overall, and that's where we're going to begin tonight. So here we go.
Or needs to carry the weight on its own, if it can. And the innocence doesn't need to enter into it. The moment nobody proved otherwise becomes load-bearing, accuracy is being assumed rather than shown. Another theme to be explored is the notion that my video is replete with whataboutisms.
None of that actually, that's whataboutism. None of that actually addresses the point about the multiple attestation issue. Whataboutism. That's his argument. Oh, yeah, you found some good, reliable data. And Mark, well, I'm not going to accept that. I'm just going to resort to whataboutism. Are you kidding me? It's just whataboutism.
Just as an observation, having watched this video several times, no, this isn't whataboutism. This is pointing out how some of the text is inaccurate. It's not whataboutism. Okay, like I don't. That's just from me watching Paul's video. It's like, no, I don't think this is whataboutism, but we'll see how Paul handles it.
Look, we give evidence that he got something accurate, and what does Paul go to? Oh, yeah, okay, I'll give you that point. No, Raymond Brown said you're wrong. That's it, whataboutism.
All right, there's two guys in here. Okay, Blossom. There's Mike Jones of Inspired Philosophies on the top there. He did watch the video. Okay, and this is why he's doing this reaction to it like a day later. The guy below him, Than, did not watch the video and had some very interesting criticisms for a guy who did not watch the video. But this is the reaction, I think, took place like a day or two later. He also appeared on Myth Vision as well to talk about it. So yes, there's when we look at Mike, you know, he did watch it, but I think he did it with the eye of finding little clips in it so he could show Than, his fanboy there, some of those clips. So but Than has not watched it, but he makes a lot of commentary on it. So yes. But the whataboutism is what Paul is dealing with right now, because Michael Jones just keeps hammering this point. So yes, there's two different guys that are reacting in the same time to Paulogia in this video. So
that's the argument. He doesn't go over any of the actual issues I brought up on this issue. How Matthew gets coinage right so much.
Okay. This one I didn't understand. Like, I'm going to comment on this one too, because Mike wants to go on and on about the coin, how the writer of Matthew must have been a tax collector because he gets so many coinage issues. Right. If anyone knows anything, like one of the things that Paul brings up is like you have Luke as the beloved physician, for instance, and he uses all these medical terms. And then Matthew is a tax collector, and the guy who wrote Matthew brings up all these monetary terms. So therefore, that's proof that Matthew is the writer and Luke is the writer who's the physician. The problem is what Paul pointed out in his original reaction video is, no, there's a lot of ancient writers that use monetary and medical terms, and they were not doctors or they were not tax collectors. You can just be very it's very interesting. You like that word, huh? Yeah, like IP is being sort of honest. I think the problem with IP is he got butt hurt. And this is a classic case of why you should do what Paul does. Paul, the beauty of Paulogia is he will wait like 2 or 3 weeks before he reacts to anything. Like he wants to study it. He wants to research it. He wants to take a look at it. Whereas Mike Jones kind of rolled with it too. So yes. Yeah, he has some interesting. Who hasn't watched the video? He does. He's always butthurt. Yes, but yeah, like it's just The problem with this argument about money, and I knew this was bullshit back in Bible college, because because I brought it up to my Life of Christ professor. Isn't it possible that the writer just knows a lot about money or knows about medical terminology? And the medical terminology that Luke uses isn't really like doctor level medical technology. He mentions like diseases and stuff more often, I guess, than some of the rest of them, but so what? Like, so yeah, there you go. Yeah, like that's kind of the problem that I have with apologists when they bring up this argument, Fred, is like anybody can have a good knowledge of money if you're just connected with business. Like, it doesn't have, just because the writer of Matthew uses a lot of financial terms doesn't mean it's written by Matthew the tax collector. Like, anybody with any kind of knowledge of money could have done it. So question. I have one of them. Paul just did a little post about this, that Habermas's fourth book is supposed to arrive in the mail at his doorstep in a week. So, so I'm interested to see what he has to say about that. So, yeah, Earl, just kind of warm up the Habermas memes. I think they're coming. I have to warm those up. Yeah, like he's the fourth book is coming. Like, so it's coming. So I'm expecting he'll respond to that. If I know Paul, he'll read it first, and that might take a little time. It's not as lengthy as some of the. You got it. All right. But yeah, as I understand it, Dragon Rider, it's like not as I don't think it's as lengthy as the first two. His whole issue in that book is how do we do apologetics and theology and ministry with the knowledge of the resurrection. So, no, here, hold on. I'll get you the review real quick, because I'm always looking up this stuff, because I think this little thing with Paul and me and Alter and various Christian people have kind of like hurt his sales a little bit. So, I don't know, they changed everything on Amazon. Of course they did. Let's see. We got On Resurrections. Yeah, that's still at half price. Refutations is still at roughly half price. Here it is. On the Resurrection, Theology and Practice. This is volume 4. It doesn't really give a review or what it is. That's sad. Let's see. In its final volume, as magnum opus, Resurrection Scholar delves into the profound implications of Jesus' resurrection and connects the core Christian theological subjects like theism, Christ's deity, and miracles, while exploring various practical applications, including evangelism, suffering, religious doubt, and fear of death. Okay. So yeah, yeah, maybe. But yeah, well, it's interesting. It's on pre-sale and it's already 30% off to try to get the sales up from the original price tag. So, which about nothing I'm impressed with. Oh yeah, it might be much more. Yeah. I don't know. Here, hold on. Let's see. This is volume 1. Thank you, Decibel. Volume 1, including all the junk. It's hardcover too, so you got to factor that in. It's probably 160 pages, or 1,060 pages. Excuse me, 1,060 pages with a hardcover. I'm sure there's a way to calculate that. I do have that bookmarked. The reason I have that bookmark is I am actually very interested as a former pastor in this last volume, and as somebody who does counter apologetics, because I want to see what happens. So it's a discipline to finish the series where J.R. Martin does not. Yeah, that's probably true. But getting back to IP, Mike Jones and Than here. Yeah, but these medical terms that apologists make big deal of with Luke, and then financial terms with Matthew, are, in my opinion, a little bit overblown. You could have an ancient writer who knew about money or knew about medical terms, like the person had a high fever. It's like a mom can tell you have a high fever. It doesn't make her a doctor. So yeah, counter apologetics to volume. Well, I have no idea. It's supposed to be done, Michael. It's supposed to be done after this release. Like, he's finished. He's done. He's going to retire, maybe.
Amounts correct. Like, I have a whole section on this about him using correct coin terms. Oh, well, what about this? Or what about?
No. And what Paul is doing is not whataboutism. What he is saying is, just because a writer uses a bunch of coinage term doesn't mean it's Matthew the tax collector. That's not a whataboutism. That's pointing out a flaw in your reasoning. Okay? Come on.
That? What about if you resort to whataboutism? That
Maybe I'll write a book. I'll call it Habermas Volume 5. What he should have said and what's wrong. What's wrong and what he should have said. There you go. Yeah, that's pretty much bullshit, yes. Yeah. But notice what Mike Jones is doing here. He's calling it whataboutism, and everything, like, I've watched part of his response video. I couldn't watch the whole thing. I got sick of it because everything in it is about discrediting Paul as a scholar, in the sense of he's studied the material. Like, everything in Michael Jones's article and everything Fangs says is all about trying to undercut Paul's credibility. Like, they're attacking Paul's credibility. All right. Seeing you bozos want to attack him. Okay. Ed has a master's degree in theological studies. I have a bachelor's in biblical studies. I watched your 6-hour, 15-minute, going to do my own shit about that. And I've watched all this back and forth. And I'm going to tell you something right now. Paul is a better scholar than you, Mike. He really is. Sorry, he is. I should. Volume 5, what Habermas should have said. But like, I'm sorry, Mike. Paul does better work than you do. You just get pissed off and attack Paul. Paul dealt with your ideas. He dealt with your stuff. Okay, so. Habermas is wrong about what he should have said. Yes. Oh my gosh. I don't know, because Mike Jones has a degree in philosophy, has a master's degree in philosophy, and he gets so many of the logical fallacies wrong. Like, I don't know where he got it from. I should look that up. I knew once upon a time where he got his degree from, but I don't anymore.
doesn't tell me you're actually evaluating the data. You're just looking for excuses to throw against the.
Sorry, pointing out that anybody else could use these medical or coinage terms is looking at the data that you gave. Oh.
So you can reject reliability.
Mike's original video series purports to be putting forth a positive case for the reliability of the Gospels. It's true that on a variety of topics like knowledge of Jewish customs, precise use of monetary terms, or so-called undesigned coincidences, and other places, Mike is advocating that the Gospels have kernels of accurate information. And in some cases, my responses weren't denials of those individual data points, but rather example of where the Gospel also contains inaccurate information in the same category. For example, sure, Matthew uses some correct names of coins, but at the same time, he gives very unrealistic numbers of those coins.
Which is a perfectly related data point to your saying that Matthew uses coinage terms. He gets some of them very unrealistically wrong. Okay, so it's pointing out that whoever wrote Matthew knew about coinage terms, but he also exaggerated and got some of them wrong as well. So if getting them right proves it's Matthew the tax collector, what does getting them wrong prove? And that was Paul's whole point, and you missed it.
So is that reliable or unreliable? Imagine if Mike offered you a smoothie and you asked if it was a healthy smoothie. Mike demonstrated how fresh the berries were and that the yogurt is high quality, and there's even some protein powder in there. There are some nutritious ingredients in there, for sure. But then I come along and warn you that along with those, there are secretly 2 whole cups of sugar in the smoothie being offered. Oh, and a tablespoon of rat poison, all in the smoothie. Would I be engaging in
This is a beautiful
whataboutism
analogy,
to not
by the
talk
way.
about Mike's Farm Fresh berries? Or am I instead informing the potential consumer that despite some positive ingredients, whether something is nutritious or not is a blend, and that the inclusion of rat poison ruins the drink? Of course, reliability of a document isn't all or nothing. The first sentence can be correct, the next sentence can be completely incorrect, and the third sentence can be partially correct. This is the models historians use. They evaluate claim by claim, not document by document. One verified claim means little when evaluating the next claim. Of course, like the bad smoothie, sometimes individual problems are so egregious that it can taint the whole document. And like
Yeah, like this is a brilliant analogy, by the way, because it's like it's this. Paul wasn't doing whataboutism. What he was saying was, okay, yeah, that's all true, but this is also true of the discussion about money in Matthew. Like Matthew gets monetary discussions wrong, and some of his amounts are ridiculously high. Okay, like it's hyperbolic. Like you could tell that he's, as a writer, being hyperbolic a little bit. And so it's like, come on. This is a perfectly valid criticism of Matthew. Oh, well, see all the monetary terms. That just proves Matthew the tax collector wrote it. It's like he gets monetary terms wrong and he exaggerates too. So it's like, yes. Yeah, it's the problem has always been apologists always take this little factor thing and they blow it out of proportion. Okay, they make it bigger than it is. Like they'll talk about Luke and his medical terms. Like he uses a lot of medical terms. He seems to be very interested in healing miracles. That's true of my mother, and she's just a medical technologist. Okay, like she's not a doctor. Okay, she's a medical technologist, and she did a hell of a job until she retired. So it's like there's there's a lot of moms out there that, get their mom degree in medicine, to take care of their kids' little sniffles and shit. They use the term high fever and all these other terms. That doesn't mean that somehow this person was a medical professional in the ancient world. Like apologists do this all the time. They don't want to talk about the stuff that counters inside the text what they're saying. And like with Matthew the tax collector, it's like, some of his numbers, in the parables of Jesus are just ridiculously high for the time period. Like, it's just weird. Yeah, the order of magnitude is very wrong. Okay, so for a guy, you're hitting it, Dragon Rider, that's the problem. That the order of magnitude is just wrong. And so whoever wrote Matthew, yeah, he knew a lot of different coinage terms, but he also screwed up. Like, it's hyperinflation, Paul, not just inflation. It's just like, yeah, like it's like the author has a high vocabulary. You're getting it, Triple E. That's what me and Paul are both dealing with here. Paul is like, and what we're dealing with, Mike Jones is calling whataboutism. And like, no, it's not whataboutism. That's directly related to what you're talking about, dude. Like this is directly related because you're sitting here saying he uses all these coinage terms, so therefore Matthew, and I'm saying a lot of people could use those coinage terms, and he gets some of the coinage terms wrong. So if he got some of them right and that makes him a tax collector, does the wrong make it right? Him not a tax collector. It's like the argument from beauty at that point. Like the beauty of the world proves there's a God. I'm like, well, does the ugliness of the world disprove God? Like, it's like he's accusing Paul, like he's accused Paul several times of cherry picking. Okay, like right at the beginning of his reaction, part I watch, he is accusing Paul of cherry picking. And like, dude, when you're doing this whataboutism stuff, you're cherry picking Paul's response. Like you're not giving the full response here. So like when Blossom was talking about who had watched the video earlier or not, Michael Jones had watched the video when he'd done his reaction, but he's cherry picking different clips from Paul's response. We could say, yeah, to save time or whatever, but he's cherry picking the parts that he wants to nail and call a certain thing. And I would say that's a very good propaganda move. So it's like, Yeah, like they could have meant, that's another point, Blossom, we can make. These terms could have meant something completely different than we think of them 2,000 years ago. So it's like, yeah, it's just, Steel Man, the Iron Age. Okay, fair enough. But yeah, like that's what Paul is dealing with here. This is not whataboutism. He's pointing out, yeah, your smoothie is a healthy drink except for the rat poison and the sugar in it. Like, and that's not whataboutism. That's pointing out the flaws. So yeah, you can Iron Man it. Like that's just as good. Really, let's be honest.
The smoothie, there's no possible strawberry so delicious that it absolves the other ingredients. It's not symmetrical, but that doesn't stop Mike from trying.
What about all the Lee McGrew points out there's a ton of undesigned coincidences between Paul and Acts. So like, what are you doing here?
That's how trust works. Someone can spend years building a reputation for honesty, but getting caught in one intentional lie is enough to make every future claim deserve a little more scrutiny. Again, what historians do is evaluate historical documents claim by claim, allowing for some to be true, some to be false, and most to be somewhere in between. Apologists can
Exactly. I think this is the biggest problem I have with Mike Jones and everybody else who wants to talk about the Bible as history or historically reliable. They can't seem to understand that what historians do, they aren't critiquing the meta. They're critiquing every single claim in the account. Like, you could have Alexander the Great, conquered X city. Okay, we can confirm that. The next statement says he went to the temple. Now we got a few witnesses that kind of say that. And then the third claim in that very passage is, and the goddess, whoever appeared to him and blessed him. And we have absolutely no historical attestation to that. We can go claim by claim of that paragraph that I just made up. I want to make everybody understand, but it shows how that works. Like we can say, yes, we have good documentation that Alexander the Great conquered the city. There's probably a good chance, given his patterns, that he went to the temple. But whether or not, Athena appeared to him and blessed him might be another claim entirely. And of course, Mike would absolutely agree with this, except when we apply it to the Gospels. That's when he gets there. So, yeah. Yes, you're Captain Obvious. That's fine. But yeah, but like he doesn't understand that. Like he seems to think that somehow he gets to, do an exception for his, and then he wants to call it whataboutism. And he's doing that to discredit Paul, but I'm going to say this is not whataboutism. And sorry, Mike, if Paul said he researched something and slapped it in front of me, and you said you researched something and slapped it in front of me, given the track record, I'd probably take Paul before you. Okay, I'm just going to say it. All right. Because I would be able to follow the references and see what he's doing. And I'm sorry, Mike. It's night and day difference compared to what the two of you do.
Can't have that though, because the miracles don't survive. They need to prop them up with a special ad hoc methodology not used elsewhere. The next big theme is what Mike calls...
Okay, so now we have a double standard again. Again, double standards. Like, it's a double standard. It's just a double standard. Again, it's a double standard. But skeptics have double standards. And again, notice the double standard. Double standards, man.
With this many double standards, we're going to need subcategories. There's labeling of scholarship.
Like, he constantly is changing his standards in response to gospel reliability. In one segment, he'll say like, oh, I'm arguing for this position because it's what majority of scholars will say. And then like in other segments, he'll cite these fringe views that are rejected by the majority of scholars. So he'll cite the majority when it's convenient for him and then completely ignore it when it's not convenient for him.
Well,
Mike, you might really be careful with that accusation, because I've watched your 6-hour, 15-minute thingy, and twice now, actually. You do that too. Okay. I hate to break the news to you, but when the majority of scholars is on your side, you're quick to jump all over that. And when they're not, you're going to somebody that not everybody agrees with. Like this whole idea of, the Gospels, the 4 canonical Gospels, I should be clear, are somehow Greco-Roman biographies. I think in the scholarly community that's kind of debatable. So yes, it's a 6-hour thingy. It's not a video. But you do that too, Mike. Like, you're quick to jump on majority of scholars a lot. Okay. And when they back you up, you're right all over it. But you have some fringe ideas too. So like you do that, bro. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to say whether or not Paul does that. So like but I've watched your 6-hour thingy, and you do that too. So before you start accusing other people of that, you want to make sure you don't do it yourself. Like maybe you want to go back, watch that 6-hour thingy that you made, and make sure you're not doing that too, because I really feel like you do that too. So here we go.
Well, that sounds very bad. I'm sure that Mike's original video wouldn't also sometimes appeal to scholarly consensus.
But most scholars today reject this position and classify the Gospels as Greco-Roman biographies. The scholarly community has shifted to agree the Gospels are in fact Greco-Roman biographies. There is a general consensus that Romans 14:14 alludes to a saying found in Mark 7:15. Many scholars believe Jesus did predict the destruction of the temple, and this is in fact what most scholars believe. Numerous scholars are in agreement that the author of the Gospel could read Hebrew. The overwhelming majority of scholars note the Gospels have a far more prominent connection to Jewish texts than to Greek texts,
while other times challenging consensus to advocate for a more fringe view.
Many scholars have been pushing back against this consensus. Most scholars date the Gospels to after 70 AD, but is this accurate? Despite the prominence of this position in modern scholarship, there is a ton of evidence that confirms the reliability of Mark. When evaluated, their arguments seem to hold little weight.
Oh wait, he did do that. This is a strange...
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I was trying to be nice and charitable, but thank you, Paulogia, for pointing out exactly what I was saying. Throughout that entire 6-hour, 15 minutes, he does the same freaking thing he's accusing Paul of. Like, hey, Martin, good to see you. Hey, Lindsay. Oh my goodness, I'm probably missing a few people because I've been having too much fun. Like, hi, Brent. But yeah, like he just accused Paul of when a scholarly consensus is convenient, Paul runs to it. But when he wants some fringe view, well, he goes off on the fringe. You literally do that through your whole 6-hour video yourself, bro. Like, come on, Mike. Come on. Thanks.
Strange criticism.
Yes.
I've learned to use scholarly consensus never as the justification, but just as a measure of how much defense one needs to put forth in order to allocate the most time on more disputed topics.
I also have to add, like for myself, when it comes to this word scholarly consensus, having now dealt with Habermas and coming to a realization that if you're talking about certain scholars, like certain events and things, like the majority of scholars who write on that topic might be a certain religion, just saying. Like, okay, like the whole thing I hope we learned with Michael Alter and Habermas and this 90% claim is you would expect a 90% claim to be true if the majority of people writing about the resurrection are believers and have a vested interest in it being true. And so the majority of scholar thing that you got to go a little bit deeper with that to find out what the hell they're talking about. Like, who are these scholars? What's their profession, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, it's just like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. A lot of projection here. But yes, Andy. Yeah. Well, like that's the whole point, Andy. Like the thing I learned from the Habermas thing, when Michael Alter got involved with Paulogia and all this stuff, and Paulogia is like pointing out, now, wait a minute, your third volume is like got mostly Christians and you say it's not. It's like what you learn about that is, okay, what type of person, what religion works on this type of scholarship? So yeah, like if it's a Christian topic of historicity, there's a pretty good chance that the majority of scholars that work on that topic are Christian. And so yeah, that doesn't prove anything. It doesn't prove the truth of it. And so the majority of scholars claim, like they're going to say something here that I kind of agree with. So there you go. Like it's one of those things. Hey, Wolf, good to see you.
So for those audience members who haven't spent their lives working in and around academia, could you just explain what the scholarly consensus is, please?
It's the kind of thing that we typically don't have to defend when we're giving a paper before other experts. This is something that everybody says, yes, that's right, and we move along.
And of course, like Mike, I too am convinced that the evidence goes against some consensus views at many points. He's a strong advocate for this.
Right after this, I go on to say, now that still seems to be the consensus, especially among critical scholars for sure. Then I make a different claim. I say, but the evidence overwhelmingly supports an historical conquest.
Next up, I'm accused of misusing arguments from silence.
Early church writings, we can see there is unanimous agreement among a multitude of witnesses. All agree the Gospels came from Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. There are none that dissent and attribute them to other authors.
While technically correct, remember that 180 AD date. The 180 date is going to matter all video. So here it is once. The Gospels were written somewhere around 70 to 100 AD. Justin Martyr quotes them heavily around 150 with no names attached. The first.
Yeah, Brett, that's kind of the point. Like, that's the thing. And that's what, I think that's what the point of the person saying that was, is like, that's what the experts agree on now. Okay, but academia and all this stuff is replete with examples of people coming forward, challenging the consensus and changing the consensus. So it's like, no, it's nice and hip over it. Yeah, that's a little bit later. But what Michael's going to claim here is that, well, this is an argument from silence. Just because it's silence doesn't mean that. No, we're pointing out the fact that you don't get the mention of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John till almost 150 years later. Like, and that's significant. But that silence that we now someday somebody might find some writing and give us some information on who wrote the Gospels a little bit earlier. But this is what we have. It's not an argument from silence. It's an argument pointing out a fact about who writes about who the Gospel, where the tradition of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John comes from. Like, it it's personal. It should be like, use like Revelations, personal consensus. I don't know about that. Yes. Vasquez was John Connor's adopted one. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. But like Mike is going to try to do something here that I find a little bit, once again, arguments from silence.
Surviving source to attach the four familiar names is Irenaeus, around 180. Every time I say 180, that's the gap I mean. There is no surviving discussion about authorship before 180, denying or affirming. Mike is calling this early, hoping the audience will forget or not know how late this is. We have no idea what debates were happening in person, or even written speculation that didn't get copied. Many works were written that did not survive. So that everyone followed suit after 180 serves as no guarantee for the anonymous years when people were using other phrases for the titles of these books.
See, I told you his argument is silence, Fan. Convinced?
Before we go further.
Okay, that is not an argument from silence. He's pointing out that before that date, we really don't know what's going on. That's just a fact. That's not an argument from silence. Okay, he's not saying the traditional argument is wrong. What he's pointing out, Mike, is that you completely didn't say that. You didn't point that out. Like, you didn't point out the fact that the earliest thing we have with Matthew, Mark, and Luke is like Irenaeus of Lyons, at least 80, 90 years after the fact. Like, I don't know. So there you go. No, have you? It's a great line. I love that movie. Some good one-liners in it.
We should clarify that there are two kinds of arguments, both called arguments from silence. What Mike will later refer to as good arguments from silence, and there's bad arguments from silence. The bad version says nobody mentioned X, therefore X didn't happen. I do my best to avoid this kind. The good version has a specific structure. If X had happened, this particular source is the kind of source that almost certainly would have mentioned X. It doesn't, so that silence counts as evidence. Modest evidence, but evidence. The key is the expectation of mention. Keep that distinction in your mind. Now, careful listeners will note that in this last clip of Mike's original video, made a clear argument from silence. He said,
all agree the Gospels came from Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. There are none that dissent and attribute them to other authors.
And I gently explained that pointing out a lack of dissenters is, in fact, the very definition of an argument from silence. But Mike interpreted my explanation of his argument from silence as my own argument from silence, which it was clearly not. In the clip Mike played, I specifically said that the silence is ambiguous favoring neither position. There is no surviving discussion about authorship before 180, denying.
Yeah, like Paul wasn't like doing that. He was just saying we don't have anything one way or the other to say anything before this date. And you need to point that out, Mike.
Or affirming. But he doubled down on his uncareful listening as he went. It's true. We can't use these silence to conclude that Paul didn't know about the life of Jesus. But what it can and should tell us is that Paul didn't consider the life and ministry of Jesus to be particularly important for his ministry.
So now he's saying we can't use silence.
I was also saying that you can't use silence in the prior clip. I'm pretty consistent on this.
But that's literally his argument against traditional authorship. We have silence in the first 100 years in the sources that have survived. Therefore, this is evidence against traditional authorship.
It is not.
It is not evidence against traditional authorship, but it does make it very, very difficult to prove traditional authorship as well. Like the whole point of that statement is to point out you can't prove traditional authorship or disprove traditional authorship because we don't flip and have anything before like 150 AD. We just don't have anything. And so until further scholarships, yeah. So Vesco's fear tells him, you always were. So, oh, there we go. Comes from my own universal acceptance being forced to do real journalistic principles. Yes. He knows. Oh, it's okay, Fred. It's all right. I expect chat to try to distract me. It's kind of a regular thing on the show. I think some people enjoy it too much, but
the silence in the first 100 years is merely the necessary condition that allows the debate. It delineates what is unknown and to be discussed. I often have to present it to establish the playing field because the average Christian is generally unaware of this silence gap. But the silence by itself is not my argument. The times during that period when church fathers like Justin Martyr quoted the Canonical Gospels, but generically call them memoirs of the apostles, is more something that I consider to be evidence against traditional knowledge. Not definitive, to be sure, but positive evidence.
So can you?
No, but that's the thing. The silence here isn't an argument from silence. It's just pointing out that silence exists. That doesn't help either side. And so for Mike Jones to go out there and go gangbusters on traditional authorship kind of hangs in the air as much as anybody would fight against it. So, yeah. Speaking of change, okay. Do you see where Dr. Brent, Yale scholar with a doctorate in manuscript dating, recently placed PIFA in the 3rd century in a paper he wrote? Oh, yeah. I heard about that. That came up on my newsfeed. I didn't get a chance to watch the story. So the P52, for those of you who don't know, is like a quotation from John that's supposedly 1st century, or at least up there, kind of proving that the Gospel of John was. If he's put it back to the 3rd century, then yeah, they kind of lost that one argument, haven't they? Reading Spider-Man comics, all bloody fake, but entertaining. I don't have any change. So there we go. All right, so there we go.
Or not. This is what I mean. He contradicts himself.
It's not a
I did not
contradiction.
contradict myself. As in both clips, if you actually bother to listen, I'm condemning arguments from silence. Sharp viewers are probably objecting that there are exceptions where arguments from silence can have some weight, and we'll return to that. It's a creative argument. It's also built almost entirely on silence.
So again, we don't like silence now, but we like silence when we're coming to the traditional authorship. Again, Paul's principles here are inconsistent.
And here's a third clip of me doing the same thing, condemning arguments from silence. And somehow that's an example of me being inconsistent. The reason we know those are nicknames is because Mark tells us the stories of the nicknames and loves calling out labels like Simon the Zealot. If Mark knew Matthew was Levi, the call to Levi would have been an obvious place to make that connection, but he doesn't.
Argument from silence. Like, why is that a good argument from silence?
So I said,
I'm sorry, it's not necessarily an argument. It's a good argument from silence, actually, because in Matthew, if it's written by Matthew, why does Matthew, the tax collector, basically copy Mark's account of his call verbatim? Like, it's an interesting point to make. I'm not even sure it's really an argument from silence so much as it is, that seems odd. Like, yes. It just seems like, oh, did you? Yeah. The late date was 150, but now it's 2. Oh, yeah, that would be, oops. Sorry, apologists. So there we go.
But specifically, Mark frequently tells us the stories behind nicknames. He loves calling out labels like Simon the Zealot, which was laying the necessary groundwork that this is the sort of source that very likely would have mentioned a disciple nickname, yet doesn't. That's the good kind. Expectation of mention met with silence. Next up, a hero so unpopular, they've somehow been left out of the upcoming Avengers movie, the Super Forger.
So, okay. Now we are positing the clever forger myth.
You're a common forger. Your Excellency, I swear I'm not.
Okay, so now we have a double standard again. Paul can bring up alleged errors in the Gospels as evidence they're not from eyewitnesses, but if we bring up stuff they get right, well, that's exactly what a forger would do, guys. Don't you get it? Again, how would we falsify this then? Like, if you're just saying everything, it shows a forger.
Do their pieces of literature have all of those things happening at the same time, 84 times?
No, they don't.
So that means that that means that the author of Acts isn't just a forger. He's a super forger.
This forger was so clever.
Everything is evidence of a forger.
Yes.
Because forgers can do anything.
It's fun to say Super Forger, which helps to distract from the misrepresentation and mischaracterization. Nobody is arguing that Luke sat in a cave, inventing a religion to fool the world. It's
Yeah, like this is the thing that I had when I was listening to Mike Jones on this issue. It's like, dude, this is not what anybody is saying. Okay, nobody's talking about a super forger. What we're talking about is somebody using somebody's style, using different things, and building a story with it. That's not a forgery. That's a nice fiction writer. Like it. Oh my goodness. Oh, it just says what he put down on Skeptic without having to go to the trouble of, like, I don't know, Fred. My problem with his response to Paul as I was watching the first part of it is like, dude, you're not really listening to what the skeptics are saying or what Paul is saying. So that's kind of my point. Yeah, I get it. I'm sorry that your brain is numb because Apologetics does that. I do apologize.
way more boring than that. The person who wrote Luke was an educated author, writing decades after the events he describes, drawing on sources, following the literary conventions of his day, arranging material for theological and evangelical purposes, and filling in speeches and scenes where he lacked first-hand information. If you've read Mike Licona's new book, Jesus Contradicted, Why the Gospels Tell the Same Story Differently, you'll know that's how ancient historiography worked. They routinely composed speeches for their subjects, compressed timelines, rearranged events, and shaped narratives around a given theme. Mike's video series advocates that the author of Luke was highly educated, used sources, wrote skillfully, and knew the geography of the regions he described. It's undeniable that he composed speeches and shaped his narrative for theological ends. In short,
Yeah, like even when I was in Bible college, we all talked about what each of the Gospels' intentions were, like what the writers were trying to intend, what their educational level was. Like you could still, like this is not a discussion that just skeptics have. This is a discussion that believers have. Okay, like scholarly believers that deal with this shit, they talk about what is the intention of Luke? What is Luke trying to do? What is John trying to do? What is Mark trying to do? What is the writer of Matthew? Which are good, legal, legit questions to ask. But what that points out is they also use some of the same techniques as writers of their day, where they condense timelines. They fill, like we do this today too. They filled in, instead of having, the 12 chapters of the history of something that puts you in the proper time frame in like a historical novel, they just summarize the history with a narrator, and then jump into the story. And that's kind of what the gospel writers do at times. Like the genealogies are a condensation of a theological point. And that's all the skeptics are doing. Okay. Is we're not saying, that somebody was being some super forger. We're saying that these people use literary techniques where they made shit up. Okay. Because it was a common practice at the time. So yes. Oh, it's entirely IP's fault. I'm sorry. Yeah, I know. I have to deal with apologists, and they kind of do this stuff. So there we go. I don't even know how long I'm going to take on this here.
he's doing
today,
nothing
so.
more than a regular, boring, competent author. Setting aside whether this fellow personally knew Paul, Mike and I agree on a lot of his attributes. You can't hold this guy up as a sophisticated writer and then scoff at the notion that he might use some of those same skills to assemble scenes to further his evangelical purposes. Or the
Correct.
researcher might have access to 84 port names and civic titles from people who were not in Jesus's inner circle, might keep slipping back into the same false dichotomy from his original series. Either Luke is an eyewitness historian, or he's some kind of literary superhero out to fool everyone. Historians expect neither. They expect exactly what we find throughout ancient literature: real geography, real officials, real travel, mixed together
Correct.
with literary shaping, theological agendas, composed speeches, and occasional invention. So yeah, both correct details and incorrect details are consistent with this mundane picture. I'm not sure why.
Correct. Yes, that's exactly what nobody's postulating a super forger. Like, I don't know where Mike and Than got that. It's a nice, brilliant propaganda piece where you're trying to characterize the critics of the gospel writers a certain way, the scholarly critics. But that's not what anybody's talking about. I have never, like, when you look at a forgery, like the charge of forgery usually in scholastic things comes from the fact that many of the biblical writers themselves admit that other people were forging their stuff. Like Paul in one of his letters says, well, one of the pseudo letters of Paul says, yeah, I got to watch out. People are forging my name. Like, the idea that forgeries weren't out there is not dismissed either. It's just, what are they about? What's going on there? And nobody is postulating a super forger like this was Luke in a cave rubbing his hands together, cackling with glee, about some mechanization he was about to do and create this. That's not what we're talking about here. It looks like Luke was a very sincere believer. He concocted stories. He put together speeches. He did what most was acceptable back then, like many other writers. He had good Greek. We're not dealing with that. It's just, nobody is postulating the super forger is the point. Okay, nobody's doing that. All right, I'm going to take a break. I'll be back in 2. In the meantime, enjoy this wonderful video by I Killed Earl. It's entertaining, humorous, and it makes me giggle every time. But I will be back in 2 minutes. All right, I am back. Okay. I always love that. Very funny. Enjoyable little mini story. May or may not be canonized. So there you go. Let's get the...
Upset with I.
All right. So, hold on. Yes. Like Andy, you kind of get the idea here with the gospel writers. Like, couldn't remember the name of the restaurant, so made one up. Jesus has all these teachings. I'm going to collect them together and summarize them and put them in his mouth. This is the kind of thing that ancient writers did. Okay. And Luke isn't doing anything different. So it's Inception. It's an Inception joke, and I'm now part of the Inception. Yes, exactly. Oh my goodness, this has gotten fun though, I have to say. But like, I think Mike Jones misses the point here. He's like he also is a little bit inconsistent himself. Okay, is Luke this brilliant writer who could also use all these other techniques or not? Like, which is it? So there you go.
Hypothesis that accounts for the data. Falsifiability comes in other areas, which is why we continue to mention Spider-Man in New York, and why I didn't bother talking about each and every mundane detail that Mike decided to spend hours listing off in checklist fashion.
What Paul does in this is he just finds a couple and cherry picks them out and just responds. It's not really.
Oh, you mean like the fact that when you brought this up with Tham and did your live stream, you had clipped out parts that were cherry picked just like him. Okay, fair enough.
addressing the cumulative case.
Because as Stan pointed out, no accumulation of modest positives would falsify the mundane idea that the authors of the Gospels were just like every author in history, getting some things right and some things wrong. Apparently.
Okay. Yeah, this consensual case, I got to deal with this again. If you add 500 zeros together, you still get zero. So just wanted to point that out. The consensus, like this cumulative case thing for the Gospels, like I get tired of hearing it. It's like, no, we take each claim in the Gospels and evaluate it individually. Like you have to do that. So I have a Discord. We have the Fluffle Fangs Discord. It's in the chat or in the description. So
I'm all over the map on harmonizing things. Didn't the Gospels just copy Paul's appearance list from 1 Corinthians 15? Probably because they weren't trying to harmonize facts.
They're not trying to harmonize facts. Okay. Remember that point, Than. Remember, the gospel authors don't care about harmonizing facts. Now, remember that point when we get to the section on undesigned coincidences. Because I bet we'll have a different standard at that point.
I'll take that bet. Except the author of John knew the book of Luke. Hugo Mendez's 2025 study shows John presupposes Lucan characters and events he never bothers introducing.
Then why doesn't John include that line from Luke in order to explain it?
Okay, I got to make a point here that I recognized when I was in Bible quizzing as a teen. We were doing the book of John, okay? And of course, I had also read all the other Gospels as a teenager, and the one thing I noted almost immediately about John is he's almost very deliberately avoiding all the stories in the synoptics. I wonder if that's because he knew what all the stories in the synoptics were and wanted to write a different gospel. And I thought that back then. I as a Christian, I never had a problem with it. Like, I don't understand why, just honestly, why this is such a big deal to people. Like, when we look at the Gospels, yes, they relied on each other. Like, I know what the apologists are trying to do. They want to make them all independent for independent things. You can't do that. I'm sorry. 3 of them literally quote parts of Mark word for word or almost word for word. I need to clarify myself. I don't want to be like Wes Huff and make a stupid blunder there, but almost word for word. Matthew and Luke sometimes edit Mark to make it fit their theology or their viewpoint a little bit better, just so you know. But John literally avoids every story pretty much that the synoptics tell. It's almost like he knew what they were. It's almost like he knew what all the stories in the synoptics were, so he could do that. He's very selective. And I recognize that way back in the day. And it's sad to me that some people can't.
Same problem. Same problem as what we said in the beginning.
Yeah, him knowing about a source does not mean he is Everything he writes is attempting to explain everything in the story. And by the way, remember what I said earlier when we were talking about the video, the hidden gospel and Paul's response? And he said, like, well, they're not trying to harmonize stuff. Here, he's just saying, oh, yeah, they're trying to harmonize this stuff.
Mike and Dan's problem here will be more apparent if the original video got to finish that thought. Except the author of John knew the book of Luke. Hugo Mendez's 2025 study shows John presupposes Lucan characters and events he never bothers introducing because he expected readers to already know them from Luke. Rudolph Bultmann, Michael Goulder, Dennis MacDonald, and Harold Attridge all agree the Johannine Last Supper dramatizes the Lucan saying. He dropped the embarrassing squabble and replaced it with foot washing. Conservative apologist Mike Licona concedes that Luke probably lifted the whole dispute from Mark 10, where it happens a week earlier in a completely different context, and relocated it to the Last Supper. If Luke moved the scene, it wasn't historically at the supper. And if it wasn't historically there, it can't be the real explanation for the foot washing. You'll notice.
Okay, I want to make the main point here. Mike Jones stopped that video way, like when Paul says, if he had just watched the rest of it or shown the rest of it in context, he would have had his answer. But Mike Jones, you want a good example of cherry picking and quote mining and stopping a play in a place and taking something out of context? That's what Mike Jones did. And Paul here is just putting the context back in.
That nowhere in this section am I talking about, let alone advocating harmonizing. I talk about John not bothering to reintroduce characters and concepts already in Luke. That's not harmonizing, that's omission. I talk about John embellishing and changing the Last Supper narrative from Luke. That's the opposite of harmonizing. Disharmonizing? I talk about Luke taking a dispute from a different context and inserting it into the Last Supper. Again, that's the opposite of harmonizing. It's creating contradictions. Unlike the author of John, who knew his gospel would stand alongside other gospels, it appears to me that the author of Luke and Matthew were attempting to make Mark obsolete. They were making...
Yes, this is a very common thing in scholarship about the gospels right now, is like Matthew and Luke aren't just using Mark, they're trying to correct Mark. They're trying to put things in a better context. They change the story. They use Mark in a way to write their own narrative, but they didn't want to rewrite everything, so they did this. And then John comes along, already knows what's in the synoptics, and so he writes in a way that demonstrates that knowledge. Like, he doesn't repeat a lot of the stories. He already assumed it. He doesn't introduce new characters. He already figures everybody from reading the other gospels knows who these characters are. So it's like, it's just frustrating that when scholars talk about these issues, that the apologists just don't listen. Like, because Christian scholars just absolutely have talked about this issue as well. Okay. And I, as a Christian kid, teenager, growing up in the church, recognized that John was definitely deliberately avoiding stuff. So it's like, how is it I can pick that up and realize that this is not a harmonization problem. This is not a deharmonization problem. It's just like, it's making an observation of how things might have gone based on looking at the text. Yeah, it's there. You done working? Okay, there you go. Good to see you, Noise. Oh my goodness, I saw you earlier, but I figured you looked like you were busy. Oh, there you go. We all tell stuff about ourselves and what was going on in our life in chat. It's amazing what goes on in chat. I don't even want to talk about what goes on in chat all the time.
Mark 2.0, fixing what they saw as problems. Quick definition, because this phrase keeps coming up, an undesigned coincidence is when one Bible book casually explains the detail another Bible book leaves hanging, and apologists argue this interlocking proves independent eyewitness memory. It gets a full...
It could also prove that they knew about each other's works. Okay. It may not be an undesigned coincidence. It may not be a coincidence. It may just be that Matthew and Luke knew what was in Mark, and John knew what was in, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And because they knew that, like they interlocked those things and mentioned those things, and sometimes they didn't, and sometimes they assumed. Like authors do these kind of things all the time, so even to today. So like I don't like if you're writing Spider-Man 259, you don't have to reintroduce the character of Spider-Man, okay? or probably Gwen Stacy or a few other characters. J. Jonah Jameson has probably been introduced by then. You don't have to reintroduce it just because this issue is now done with a different comic book artist and writer. Doesn't mean that they have to reintroduce everything else that came before. Okay, like this isn't hard to figure out how the Gospels are interdependent of each other. They are. There is no independence. The only independent gospel that I can see of the four of them is Mark. Okay, he's the first one to write. And the rest of them all know he exists and use him or understand that he exists and just doesn't assume. Like, it's just, I don't understand why a lot of people think these undesigned coincidences even exist. Like, it's an undesigned coincidence. No, not really. It could just be previous knowledge.
Section later.
Get your methodology right, because you're contradicting yourself. Were they trying to harmonize or not? Because when we talk about undesigned coincidences, they are. We talk about them not trying to use stuff in Paul, which you think they were using. Oh, well, they weren't trying to harmonize. You have no consistent methodology here. This is insane.
This is maybe why Mike and Fan think I don't understand undesigned coincidences, because they're imagining that my argument is deliberate harmonization. No, my argument is literary dependence. Literary dependence is a later author knowing about and using an earlier text. Fact harmonization is an author reconciling factual discrepancies between two accounts to make them agree. These are not the same claim, and they coexist without any tension. As I said, at least 3 of the 4 gospel writers didn't write thinking they'd be part of a library. But John, being familiar with Matthew, Mark, and Luke as background knowledge, necessarily breeds conscious or subconscious story expansion and interpretation, which comes across as new details in the telling. This is not dissimilar to what modern audiences call headcanon, a fan's personal interpretation of a fictional universe that is not explicitly confirmed by the official source material. As a famous example, in Iron Man 2, this Stark Expo scene takes place in Queens, New York.
Nice work, kid.
Now, because Queens is where Peter Parker grew up, and Spider-Man's MCU debut was years away, some fans declared their own personal headcanon that the boy in this scene is actually young Peter Parker. The writers of Iron Man 2 intended no such notion. In fact, the legal agreements between Marvel and Sony at the time would have strictly prohibited it. It's just a detail made up by people consuming the content. Fast forward to 2017, and Tom Holland is on a press tour, and a reporter from the Huffington Post asked the author about this. Holland said, "I can confirm that as of today. I literally had a conversation with Kevin Feige only 20 minutes ago. Maybe I've just done a big old spoiler, but it's out there now. It's cool. I like the idea that Peter Parker has been in the universe since the beginning." So both Iron Man 2 and Spider-Man Homecoming were made and completed without this detail in the writers' minds, but now future works are treating it like the official backstory. This is the...
Yes, and it's a good example of what the gospel writers do too, because what John is doing, okay, when he writes, is he knows all the events in the synoptics, and he understands what he wants to understand from them. And so when he writes, all of that is there. It's a dependence on the other works. It makes him interdependent with the synoptics. And it's like, I get that apologists want these to be all independent eyewitnesses, but they're not. Okay. And the text shows that. It absolutely shows that. Like there's a canon that John has in his head about Jesus that's been formulated from the synoptics, and he still uses it as he writes his own gospel. This is not hard to understand. Like it's just, but apologists don't like that, because then John might not necessarily need to be an eyewitness, and they have to have him be John, the beloved disciple, an eyewitness of all the things. But if that's the case, then it doesn't have to be that. So, yes.
Power of literary dependence. Responding to 6 hours in 2.5 hours obviously involved some editing, but that doesn't mean Mike and Fan have to like how I did it.
You saw the jump there, didn't you? That he cut my video?
The first editing complaint...
You mean the cut like during we just saw where you stopped it at a certain point and didn't bother to go on there, Mike? Because if you had gone on, you would realize that that's not what he was talking about. You mean like that jump cut?
Comes from well before their response live stream. Mike immediately took to Twitter to call me out. Justin Martyr, writing around 150 AD in Rome, extensively quoted the texts, but referred to them only collectively as the memoirs of the apostles. Mike will not mention this.
Even Justin Martyr suggests the Gospels were known to be attributed to evangelists, not that they were anonymous works.
And it was the first thing he mentioned in an interview on MythVision when asked about my video.
He got a lot of things wrong. Yeah, at one point, he either just completely lost it or outright lied. So when he's responding to the second video, he claims I didn't bring up Justin Martyr in my video, who wrote the Gospels. I definitely did. I definitely brought up what Justin Martyr said. He says I didn't. And that's just one of the mistakes I found.
So let's take a look at how I've either completely lost it or outright lied. Justin Martyr, writing around 150 AD in Rome, extensively quoted the texts, but referred to them only collectively as the memoirs of the apostles. Mike will not mention this.
Mike will not mention this.
Yeah, this part was egregious.
Yeah, I did mention Justin Martyr.
Dude, he said something very specific that was said by Justin Martyr, not just mentioning Justin Martyr. Like, you guys completely overlook the context and what specifically he said. I notice you apologists do this a lot. You don't address the specifics. You jump right to but I did mention Justin Martyr. That's not what he's saying. He's saying you didn't mention certain aspects of what Justin Martyr says about the Gospels. That is still true.
I said that you did not tell your audience that Justin Martyr extensively quoted the actual canonical Gospels while referring to them only collectively as memoirs of the apostles. Your response was, I mentioned Justin Martyr. Mentioning the man's name is not the same as informing your audience about what he did.
That's a yada yada over the best part.
Now, to be fair, he mentions other things I didn't mention, but if I'm making a positive case, I'm going to focus on the positive evidence. But I did bring up Justin Martyr.
Yes, to be fair, I accurately indicated that you did not inform your audience of a specific fact, and you told the public that
he either just completely lost it or outright lied.
Because you said the same person's name. Play the clip again.
Even Justin Martyr suggests the Gospels were known to be attributed to evangelists, not that they were anonymous works.
See, I missed that the first time. This is so much worse than not mentioning anything about it. You very much misrepresented this situation. Martyr attributed the Gospels to apostles, but you've switched that to attributed to evangelists. That may sound innocent to an average pew sitter, but Mike has read too many books to not know that in any conversation about gospel authorship, the evangelists is shorthand for exactly four men: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Yes, the New Testament uses evangelist for any preacher, but that's not the register Mike is speaking in, and he knows it. In authorship discussion, attributed to the evangelists means attributed to those four names, as surely as the 12 means the list of disciples.
No, Earl. See, because I'm fairly certain this is going to take 3 parts, probably, if not 4. So I wouldn't worry about it too much, because there's so much in this video that Michael Jones gets wrong. I could do this all day. Like, I really could. But I'm going to get to a point, too, where it's like, yep, I'm done for the week first live streaming. So, yeah. I love you, Earl, but I don't want to just quit and start over again. I don't want to do that. I'm going to focus on the positive evidence. So Mike admits he lies. Yes. Yeah, he does. Well, the biggest egregious thing here is like, I did mention Justin Martyr. That's not what Paul said. Paul said you didn't mention that Justin Martyr said this about what the evangelists or apostles are. That's the problem. Mike Jones jumped on that and then called Paul a liar at MythVision. And yes, I do think it's weird that Derek is interviewing IP. You basically called Paul a liar on MythVision's podcast, and he didn't lie. You did not mention that Justin Martyr called these things memoirs of the apostles, that he didn't call them gospels or any of that sort of thing. So yes, it's low bar mark. Yeah. But like Paul was pointing out a very specific thing that Michael Jones didn't mention. Not that he didn't mention Justin Martyr. I'd actually give, so what, maybe he missed the Justin Martyr quote before, but the fact is when Mike Jones talks about Justin Martyr, he's he's doing something very specific, and Mike Jones wants to go, oh, he lied. And it's like, no, he didn't lie, dude. Like, come on, man. You have a 6 hour, 15-minute video. Like, maybe you might want to put some time date stamps in there and mention some shit. Like, come on. Like, I don't know. Like, it's kind of like he admitted the fact that Paul was talking about something very specific that Justin Martyr said about the Gospels. And that's what Paul was talking about. Oh, but I did mention Justin Martyr. No, dude, that's not the point. Like, you completely missed it. And, Paul's not accusing you of not saying Justin Martyr. He's accusing you of not mentioning what Justin Martyr called the Gospels. Like, that's what he called them. So they don't discuss the subject. They just go in the part that supports their opinion. Yeah, pretty much. And so he's kind of using excuses, tactics. But I would call Mike Jones out there and misrepresenting what Paul said. And he's actually the liar. Like, he completely propagandized that moment and got his audience to not realize that Paul was mentioning something very specific that Justin Martyr said, not Justin Martyr himself. So it's like, and I would say both Fan and Mike Jones kind of misrepresented what Paul said there. And they jumped all over, oh, I mentioned Justin Martyr. I do it right in my video. Well, yeah, okay. But that's not what Paul was talking about.
In any remotely academic setting, saying attributed to the evangelists means attributed them to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, which is decidedly not what Justin does. Justin attributes them to generic, unnamed apostles, the word
Correct.
Broadly used in the early church for those who are sent. Sloppy or strategic, the vocabulary carries a conclusion that the evidence doesn't. Facts.
Yes, like Mike Jones also misrepresents this because as what Justin Martyr said, but Justin Martyr doesn't say evangelists, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. He just says apologists. And so even Mike Jones changed the quote from Justin Martyr. So
it's not in evidence. I wished I had noticed that for the first response. In my opinion, he'd have been better off not drawing attention to this. But by all means,
he either just completely lost it or outright lied.
Full disclosure, I should note that Mike briefly mentions Justin's phrase, Memoirs of Peter, in a later chapter in the series, in a different context. Still, my claim was specific. Mike did not tell his audience that Justin quotes these books extensively while only ever using a collective, nameless label for them. Apparently, there was also an epidemic of me not addressing the things that Mike deemed to be his best points.
I wanted to put that in there to try to be charitable to Paul. I get that he's not going to have time to do everything. But again, there's just some places he just misses entire overall points. It's just, kind of disappointing. My biggest problem with his overall video, he ignores a lot of the main points. He ignores some of the main points.
All right, I'm going to stop right there. He's going to keep going on about this for a few minutes. Mike, if you ever watch this, if you're going to do 6.5 hours, it's not going to kill you at the end of every chapter to kind of give a summary of what your main points are. Hell, put it up on the screen. Okay? Because as it is, I'm doing my series on your shit, and I'm having to watch it and create, and I'm trying to make sure I do get all the points in and collect them into groups, and so I can deal with them. I'm not going to go point by point, minute by minute with that video. That's going to take way too long. So I'm going to just listen to it, summarize it, give it your main points. But if you don't define what your main points are at the end of every chapter, how the hell is anybody supposed to know that in something that's 6 hours and 15 minutes long? First complaint, it's too goddamn long. Second complaint, you don't really do a good job of demonstrating what your main points are. It's just a communication thing. Take it from somebody who was in the ministry, and I do YouTube. I have a vested interest in communication. I ran for public office. I've done speeches. I've done all that stuff. When you get to an end of a speech or an essay or something, a common thing that people do, they freaking, how about this? They summarize what they said. They tell you what they said and give you a conclusion. And that way everybody knows what your main points are. I think this complaint has got to be the most shallow of all your complaints, because Paul can't read your mind as to what your main points are, and you make a shit ton of points. Okay. Like, I'm not saying they're good points, but you make a crap ton of points, Mike, and you never bother really to summarize them at the end of every chapter, which would have been very helpful for me too. But I'm going to have to go watch your chapters, summarize them myself, do all that bullshit, right? I'm going to have to do all that in order to hopefully get all your points. And you'll probably have the same criticism of my stuff if you watch it. But the point of my whole point, my main point is, if you're going to do a video like this or a video series like this, could you please give all that shit at the end? Like, could you do that? Okay. Like, that way we know what they are. Like, I can't read your mind as to what you think the best points are and what's the weak points are.
Points I make in that. So it's like, dude, are you really responding to the series if you're ignoring a lot of the biggest points I'm trying to bring up? I'm not saying he ignores every point, but he ignores some of the biggest points.
Did you label your main points as the main points? There was 6 hours presented, in my opinion, very flatly from start to finish, without visual or inflectional distinction between side points and main points. Even now that you've expressed which points you think are the main ones, I've rewatched and I don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, like, okay, if you're not going to hit the main points, I guess you're agreeing that, yeah, the memories could have been reliable by the time they were writing them.
Honestly, yeah. But let me be precise about what I'm agreeing to. If eyewitnesses wrote these books, which I don't grant, and which is the entire question, then memory in broad strokes isn't where the case fails. That's why I spent 5 minutes on it. It's downstream of the real dispute.
This isn't even addressing the main points of those videos. So, like, for the first video, What Are the Gospels? He didn't address the main point. The second video, he addressed some of the main points. I'll give him that. But again, in doing so, it'd make the most convoluted alternative theory that is just violates Occam's razor.
Haven't you ever heard of Occam's razor? The simplest explanation is probably the correct one. So what's the simplest explanation? I don't know. Maybe they're all reverse vampires and they have to get home before dark.
And in the third video, again, doesn't address the main points. So what was the point?
I found myself asking that often. Maybe I'm not good at learning. Maybe you're not good at communicating. Maybe some of each.
He cut out 9 minutes of me listing facts for the reliability of John. The stuff that he's not going to do. I get it. Don't have enough time to address everything. We're not doing that either. But
you're not. By a very rough count, you played about half of my video. Not bad. But guess what? I also think you left out many of my main points. But I understand that Mike didn't find these to be the main points from his perspective. He wanted to address what he wanted to address. That's fine. As for those 9 minutes, I found them all to be redundant examples of the same type of thing. So I dealt with it all at once in the context of a broader category.
It's just kind of odd. So all those facts, they're good to go, I'm assuming. I don't know. Like, where are we supposed to go with that?
Get a more persuasive category of facts rather than just more examples of the non-persuasive category? Up to you. But here's an important section where Mike has a good point.
In the 19th century, W.K. Hobart documented numerous instances of medical terms throughout both works and used this to argue the author was a physician.
Henry Cadbury decided to check this medical vocabulary claim and looked at where else those terms appeared. They showed up in Josephus, Lucian, Plutarch, and frequently in the Greek Septuagint. None of those authors were physicians. Cadbury concluded, the style of Luke bears no more evidence of medical training and interest than does the language of other writers who were not physicians.
Why is Paul citing an argument I directly addressed in my video? Here's the slide. Let's see where Paul cut it off. Of medical terms throughout both works and used this to argue the author was a physician. But in 1919, Henry Cadbury responded to Hobart and argued many of the terms that Luke used, which Hobart classified as medical, could be found throughout other ancient works, like the Septuagint, the writings of Josephus, the lives of Plutarch, or the works of Lucian. Paulogia cut me off to say the very thing I go on to say in a response to me. How is that not a little dishonest?
Well, but then I have to ask the question then, Mike, what was your point? Because if you're going to refute the idea that medical terminology, then why bring it up at all? Like, if you're going to bring up Cadbury, then, nice chocolate, by the way. But if you're going to bring up Cadbury to basically refute your own point, then what's the point of bringing up the point in the first place? Like, the whole medical terminology thing I've already dealt with, but come on, like, what's the point then? And maybe, Paulogia did miss it. Like, you have 6.25 hours of shit here, Mike. You don't do a very good job. Like, you break it up into chapters, and that's what I'm doing, but there's a lot of problems with the way you organized it within each video and each chapter. And this is one of them. Like, if you're going to bring up that this isn't a strong point to prove that Luke is a physician, then why bring it up at all? Your whole point is to try to prove the resurrection is historically reliable. This is just A, he used a lot of medical terminology, but B, well, that doesn't really mean anything. Because anybody could do it.
Like, I totally agree. Cadbury's response to Hobart was good. It was sufficient. He made his point.
In looking at this critique, I've gone over the original 15-part series, my response, and this response, and I'd say Mike is absolutely correct on this point. My response made it seem as if Mike was unaware of this refutation, when in fact he clearly is. As Mike points out, I wasn't actively hiding this fact, since I did include his slide.
The closest he gets is he just shows the slide that I put up there later on in his video. But like, at least acknowledge that, yeah, I went over all of Cadbury's stuff, Paul.
Except that by putting up the slide, he kind of acknowledges that. Like, so I guess I'm trying to figure out what the beef is. Like, so we passed over it, but we didn't because we put the slide up. I don't know. I'm very confused.
Why are you cutting? Like, this is very weird. You cut me off to say the very thing I go on to say. Like,
so yes, I will acknowledge here that Mike Jones was aware of the Cadbury refutation, and my editing obfuscated that awareness. I can assure you that there was no malicious intent, but I strive for better diligence than that and welcome being held to higher standards. So please accept my sincere apologies for this slip. At the same time, at the end of the day, Mike is not saying I made a bad point. So we ultimately agree here.
Are you responding to me, or are you just trying to show your audience that you did something when you really didn't? Like, why did you cut off right there and not at least play another 10 seconds? The video's over 2 hours. You could have played another 10 seconds and said...
No. Bro, we've already got the fact that we're dealing with 6 hours and 6.25 hours of you. And then Paul is trying to be as brief as possible. So honestly, I think he could have left this whole part about Luke physician language completely out.
Said, Michael did acknowledge Cadbury.
I will say that even in the review, I find it strange that you bothered spending time presenting a common but flawed argument for a physician writing the third gospel, if you ultimately agree with me that it's a bad argument. I do still hear this one often from lesser apologists. So it seems my counter-apologist reflex jumped the gun. I would still bolster your brief retraction.
Cadbury was correct to say that Hobart overextended his claim that the mere presence of terms found in medical treatises is enough to demonstrate the author was a physician.
With my stronger one, if only as a rare opportunity to use one of my favorite quotes in biblical studies. Humorously, Cadbury also showed that much of the supposed medical vocabulary in Luke Acts also appeared in ancient manuals for treating horses. Maybe the author was a veterinarian, but I will not take on board the rest of the complaint.
My argument for the medical terminology was not Hobart from the 1800s. I literally cite a bunch of works after Cadbury, after this, that he doesn't go into great length on. He just spends a lot of time talking about how Cadbury debunked Hobart, as if that's the place I was arguing. Like, quite frankly, shut up if that's what you're going to do.
In the context of a 2.5-hour video, I spent 77 seconds on the Hobart argumentation and 126 seconds on Mike's post-Hobart argumentation. I understand that you think your points were worthy of more, but I did not. And what I did is counter to the proportionality being characterized. Mike's plodding enumeration of similar examples didn't add up to additional points. We're back again to 15 parts, 6 hours. Move over argument from page count, Gary Habermas. No one reads anymore. Inspired Philosophies bringing in the argument from video length. Time spent is not always proportional to points made.
Is this now the record for the longest live stream on this channel? Probably.
We never say anything unless it is worth taking a long time to say.
A long talker.
Yeah, he is so boring.
The argument is that these words were never clinical terminology to begin with. Baylor Moore Sybok commentary notes that the medical vocabulary argument doesn't account for the fact that Luke also endeavors to use a correct professional terminology idiom in other spheres, including the legal system. Maybe the author was a doctor, a lawyer, and a veterinarian, or just an author educated across multiple domains.
His response to the fact that Luke uses a bunch of medical terminology is to show that Luke was even more educated.
No, you heard me say that my argument is that these words aren't medical specialty, just words that a person with a general education would know without specialized medical training, and therefore doesn't require...
I'm going to interject here that Mike basically chose the path that allows him to disparage Paul, instead of realizing, hey, all this terminology, it can actually be used by a lot of people. Like, I don't have to be a pharmacist to talk about milligrams of dosage. Like, I don't I don't have to be a doctor to talk about a broken leg. Like, I don't have to be these things. I don't have to be a tax collector to talk about the different values of coinage in the stock, in the coinage market. I don't have to be these things. And Mike just picked the one like, oh, he's even more educated than we thought. No, that's not what Paul is saying. And I think Mike kind of missed the sarcastic tone too. I thought that was kind of interesting as well.
Postulating that a physician was involved any more than imagining that a gospel was written by a lawyer based on a handful of legal terms. There were also a few unintentional themes in Mike and Fan's live stream, the first of
This
which
is my
I'll
favorite
call
part.
own goals.
Great work from Mane. Oh, and it's an own goal. What a gift for Liverpool.
On the matter of undesigned coincidences, two examples were discussed that are meant to show the interlocking of Luke and John, the Last Supper serving detail, and Pilate's threefold I find no guilt usage. Now, it is my contention that, given that we've shown that Matthew, Luke, and John are all literarily dependent on Mark, John is dependent on Matthew and Luke as well, and Matthew and Luke borrowing from each other or a Q source, what you have here is collusion, not corroboration. These are a single source, and I can't believe it's taken me all this time to play it, but the undesigned coincidences argument requires that the gospel authors wrote independently of each other. They didn't, as is both the scholarly consensus and demonstrated repeatedly throughout this video. This detail.
Yes, like this is the own goals, like where they bring up stuff. They're going to bring up some stuff and talk about it, and it's going to be like, no, you just admitted that they were borrowing from each other and they're not independent. Like, it's going to be fun.
Alone makes this entire line of argument fail. Now, Mike doesn't like the well-evidenced notion that the Gospel of John is dependent on the Gospel of Luke. So instead, he advocates for the opposite.
Paul ignored a very big section in my video on John, didn't even address it, which is that Luke Vandewey has shown that one of Luke's sources was John, showing he was an eyewitness. So that can also explain that data that he's bringing up here. And again, this can just be explained with Luke Vandewey's argument that for Luke, John was a source. That's why there's similarity there.
Why is this an own goal? Because, as I expressed, undesigned coincidences lose all power when there's dependence, be it literary.
Yes, and that's what Mike Jones did there, is he cited a couple of scholars that say Luke used John as a source, which makes them interdependent, not independent. Like, it gets funny here because Mike Jones wants to sit there and maintain the independence of all the individual eyewitness authors or whatever of the four gospels. And in order to do that, he has to separate their dependence on each other for writing, which the synoptic problem is a big one for the first three. You can't really get past the fact that Luke and Matthew use Mark quite extensively and seem to have a common source too. But yeah, yes, no collusion, yes. But they are in collusion. They're in collusion with each other. That is too doggone obvious. And thus they are interdependent. They are not independent sources. And what Mike Jones just did there, well, if we believe these two scholars, then Luke borrowed from John.
Dependence or other common source. So Mike is not only conceding, but advocating that John was a source for Luke. Switching from John used Luke to Luke used John doesn't undermine the contention. And a source, but not literary dependence, is not a distinction that matters for this purpose. Any source relationship in either direction explains the interlock without needing two independent eyewitness memories. So I appreciate you conceding this one. Another infamous so-called undesigned coincidence is the green grass detail in the feeding of the 5,000. Dale Allison and Joel Marcus have argued this is more Hebrew Bible allusion and typography than weather report. Mark 6:34 compares the crowd to sheep without a shepherd. Jesus then, as the good shepherd, makes the flock lie down on the green grass. That's Psalm 23, deliberately invoked. Now, don't take my word for it, because apparently this topic is too advanced for me to understand.
Paul just cherry picks a couple undesigned coincidences he doesn't understand and then tries to respond to them.
But it seems to me that undesigned coincidence.
Well, that's a nice accusation, Mike, but I don't think you proved that.
Advocates want a skeptic to be convinced that the best explanation for these details is a grounding in real eyewitnesses who were there. Now, for green grass, The scholarly take of Hebrew Bible illusion provides a very plausible explanation that isn't eyewitnesses. Fan protests.
Like,
Thanks,
two
Tim.
things can be true at the same time, by the way, right? Matthew can be making an allusion to Psalm 23 and reporting on something historical.
But in conceding this, he puts in a known goal. If a vivid narrative detail is equally consistent with both an eyewitness genuinely remembering the scene and a writer deliberately echoing a scriptural allusion, then the detail cannot be used as evidence for either explanation over the other. Because
Correct. Yeah, like if I don't think Fan realized what he did there, but he did do an own goal. Yes. Well, yeah, but the whole point here, Kurt, is that Fan makes a mistake here because he allows it to be an allusion to Psalms. And so, okay, well, then neither side can make an argument. Like, you can't sit there and say, on the one hand, it shows that they weren't writing together, but then you're allowing for the fact that they could be also referring to Psalms. Well, now you've just played into the other side's hand. So it's like Paul's point here is very good. Then neither side, if you're going to take that stance, what Than has done there is he's just like he's screwed himself, and he didn't even realize it when he did it.
it's consistent with both.
It's not about the fact that the accounts interlock with each other. It's about the casualness of the interlocking.
Oh, yes. Don't forget the casualness.
Keep your distance, though, Chewie.
Yeah, casualness, really, Than? What do you mean by that?
But don't look like you're trying to keep your distance. I don't know. Fly casual.
Fly casual.
Like, that is the main point of undesigned coincidences. It's the type of casualness and a dovetailing between testimonies that is more consistent with honest reportage than somebody making something up or somebody trying to use another literary source and try to harmonize it or anything like this. Forced harmonizations are going to be like obvious. There's going to be things that stand out to you. But
except Than, if you're acknowledging that he's possibly alluding to Psalms, then that is not a casual reference. That's a deliberate reference to a previously stated book passage. Okay, so if you're going to sit there and say it's both sides of the fence, you can't say that this is casual anymore. Because if you're going to say that it can be true that both he's alluding to this plus he's using Psalms, well, then he's deliberately putting the green grass in, okay, in order to allude to the Psalm. That's not casual anymore. Like, and what do you mean by casual? It seems like a value judgment to me. So, yeah, like riding two donkeys at once, yes. No one can read the Gospels actually knows what their similitude is, apparently. Yes. Okay. See, there's Earl. See, I knew if I stayed on long enough, Earl, you'd be back. You're here. Thanks. But yeah, like, I don't know if see, Paul's right to pointing this out as an own goal, because what Than didn't realize what he did is that he's like acknowledging, well, it could be allusion to Psalms, which makes it deliberate, not casual, just a casual writing reference. Like, this is the whole problem I have with undesigned coincidences in the first place, is you're assuming that it's undesigned. You don't really have any proof of that. You don't know what's going on in the author's brain. You can't read his mind. So it all hangs on this speculation that we just don't have any information about. And so I look at a lot of these so-called undesigned coincidences and ask this very simple question. How the hell do you know that? How in the world do you even know that? Like, how do you know that this is a casual reference and not a deliberate one? You wouldn't know unless you were inside the author's brain. And so the whole argument from undesigned coincidence, to me, stems from a big assumption that you can't scholastically prove. You have to use a lot of assumptions to make it.
Just completely by incidental, like accidental corroborations that are about casual details, like where Philip is from. That's not something that you just go out of your way to make up. That is like, this is the point of undesigned coincidences.
Why wouldn't you? What? I'm sorry. I've written characters in fiction too and made up where they were from to give them a little detail and give them a little color. Like, any author can do that, regardless of what they're writing. Like, what? Once again, these undesigned coincidences, How do you know they're undesigned?
Ah, yes.
You just don't.
What could be more casual than thinking about a story enough that you incorporate literary allusion in the casual details? So casual.
Again, I don't think Paulogia understands the argument from undesigned coincidences.
No, he doesn't.
If you say so. Another theme is the need for fact-checking of Mike and Fan, starting with whether the author of the fourth gospel, allegedly a fisherman, correctly uses Greek words for fish. In John 6, opsarion refers to preserved fish, which matches its classical meaning. But in John 21, the same author uses it for freshly caught fish, still sitting in the net, specifically John 21:10.
So this isn't actually accurate. I think Paul made an error here. We just go to the interlinear here. I'm just going to type in fish. John uses different words for fish. When it's caught in the net, it's ichthyon. When it's cooked, it's opsarion.
The text on screen agrees with me and is...
I hope you guys all catch that. If you watch Paul's original video, you can bring it up big. You can look at the text on the screen. It's not Paul who made the error. It's Mike, just so you know.
The opposite of what Mike just said. You can see highlighted in orange, fish you have caught, not fish that is cooked. And it's opsarion, as I said, not ichthyon, as Mike said it should be. I'll play it again so that you can see that the words Mike is saying are not the same as the words on the screen.
So this isn't actually accurate. I think Paul made an error here. We just go to the interlinear here. I'm just going to type in fish. John uses different words for fish. When it's caught in the net, it's ichthyon. When it's cooked, it's opsarion.
You know what? I'll just remember that it's the opposite of what these say.
Now, there are times when the author of John does get it right, which Mike will distract us with. But on screen now is the author of John getting it wrong, which is what I said.
I don't think Paul checked this thoroughly here.
Yes. The writer of John gets it wrong. Just so everybody knows, like, he gets it wrong.
I don't read Greek, which is exactly why I cited Raymond Brown instead of my own eyeballs. Next up, I'm accused of manufacturing contradictions. Yet another problematic example. The first written version of the story cannot be in Bethsaida, because in Mark 6:45, immediately following the miracle, they get into a boat to go to Bethsaida. Luke relocated the event to Bethsaida, which created a problem he didn't fully clean up. His disciples asked Jesus to send the crowd to the surrounding villages for food because they're in a desolate place. Except in Luke, they're in a city. Mark Goodacre calls this editorial fatigue. Luke moved the story but forgot to update all the language. Lest that was unclear, the problem Mark Goodacre is pointing out is that Luke appears to be expressing two conflicting statements in a pattern coherently explainable by editorial fatigue. Mike?
Luke 9:10-17. On their return, the apostles told them all they had done, and he took them and withdrew them apart to the town called Bethsaida. So it says apart, not in.
Rather than apart, almost every other English translation says privately, which I think gives a clearer picture of what's happening here. And pretty much every translation, including the ESV, still says to a town called Bethsaida.
When the crowds learned it, they followed him and they welcomed him and spoke to them, and he spoke to them of the kingdom of God and cured those who had need of healing. Now, the day began to wear away, and the 12 came and said to him, send the crowds away to go to the surrounding villages and countryside to find lodging and get provisions, for we are in a desolate place. That's in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 9. I thought Paul just said they were in a city. Luke says they're in a desolate place, ladies.
That's the problem with that passage, Mike. You're not getting the point. It says both. It says he's in a city, and it also says they're in a desolate place. You're not getting the point, Mike. So there you go. Oh my goodness. Hey, Elizabeth, good to see you. I'll tell you what, Earl, seeing you're having the not great, and I need another intermission. I'm going to play your intermission again. How's that? And I'll keep going for another hour, just because I'm feeling good today. How's that? So, so there you go. There you go. So here I go. I'm going to play Earl's intermission again because I need another intermission. I may go on a little longer tonight because I'm not feeling too bad. So, and Elizabeth just got here, so I'm sure she wants to have some fun with Mike Jones too. So I'm gonna play Earl's intermission again. I hope nobody minds, and it'll give her a little bit of a boost. So there we go. right, I am back. Well, yeah, I mean, but that's Jersey. But what Paul's trying to get across is this is a contradiction in the text itself. Like it says that they all came to Bethesda, the city, the town, and then later on it says they're in a desolate place without any movement. Okay, so it's like there's nothing here. Well, the town of Bethesda is there. It's not really a desolate place. So, yes. You love this? You love that? Okay, there we go. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it is great. It's good work. Earl did a good one there. She'll take the head pats too, always. We'll give her 1,000 head pats for the intermission. It's awesome. All right, let's get back to this. I'm doing pretty well tonight. So it's been a light week. So here we go. So we're gonna keep going until I get tired.
Did Paul bother to check the Gospel of Luke?
So yes, this is exactly what Mark Goodacre talks about and what I repeated. The problem is precisely that Luke says both things. They were in a city, they were in a desolate place. You read aloud the evidence for my very claim.
You just proved my point.
Yes, thank you for doing another own go, Mike. This is one of the big contradictions in Scripture, and a lot of scholars accredit it to Luke having some writer's fatigue and not realizing what he was doing. So he's writing a story, and he can't even get the location consistent. This is not unusual for a lot of writers. Like a lot of writing, even today, has writer's fatigue in it, and published works. And the problem is you have to maintain that the Gospel of Luke is flawless, because it's inspired by God instead of just a work of fiction by men or half fiction, half history or whatever. And so you can't even see the fact that Luke makes a boo-boo. Like he makes a boo-boo. He's probably tired. He says, "Oh, we're going there." And we're here, but we're in a desolate place. Who would you rather have dinner with, Mike Jones or Redeem Zuner? Oh boy, that's a tough one. Man, I'd probably do Mike Jones. Redeem Zoomer is just a very insufferable Reformed Calvinist. Yeah, I won't go any farther than that. I can have a conversation with Mike Jones because I'll look him in the eye and say, "Dude, you need to be better." Like, if you're going to be an apologist, the problem I had with Mike Jones when he first started this, like if you watch early Inspired Philosophy videos, he's much more open-minded and he's trying to be much more careful. Nowadays, he's become more of a trope apologist, and I just don't have as much patience with him. So I can remind him about how he does. So yeah, he's a Dutch Reformed Protestant, I believe. Like he's I'm very familiar with the Dutch Reformed because I'm like an hour away from Grand Rapids, Michigan. So and Calvin University, it used to be Calvin College, and Calvin Seminary just down the road from me via freeway. So I can be there in an hour. So there you go. But yes. Yeah, he doesn't want to acknowledge this fact, and I think that's the problem. Like he's trying to say Paulogia made a goof up here, but he didn't make a goof up. The whole point was, bro, your gospel writer says he's in a city and then says he's in a desolate place. Now, unless the guy's making a funny about Bethesda, then yeah. So I don't know. Your mother from? Oh, is she? Oh, that's right. Yes. Yes, your mother's from Grand Rapids. Yes. Grand Rapids is a very interesting place. I have to give it that. Between Calvin College and there's a whole bunch of stuff down there. Grand Valley's at the university down there. So I'd say bless you, Earl, 8 times, but we don't do that here. I'll ask Fangs to sit on your lap and try to calm you down. So, yeah, I think that's probably why I prefer Mike Jones to Redeem Zoomer, because I don't think Jones is that heavy duty when it comes to theology, whereas Redeem Zoomer is just, yeah.
Oops.
It's not
It
an
was
oops.
put up. For we are in a desolate place. So I thought they were in a city. This is the big response to debunk the gospel reliability series, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so impressed. I don't know what to do anymore.
Did you miss the part earlier in that text where it says he's in a city? And then he says he's in a desolate place. Did you miss that part, Mike? Great.
Manufacturing contradictions, man.
If you don't think calling the same location a city in one verse and a desolate place 2 verses later is at least a tension in the text, then you're operating under very different standards than scholars like aforementioned Mark Goodacre and Michael Goulder, Michael Walter, Joseph Fitzmyer, John Noland, Howard Marshall, and John Carroll. Not manufactured by me, to be sure. Whether you think it's a contradiction or not, it's factually accurate for me to point out that Luke says both in a city and in a desolate place. There's denial of cause and effect, because when Jesus cries out in Aramaic, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, the author of Mark has characters mistaking this for calling for Elijah. But in Aramaic, Eloi sounds nothing like Elijah. The confusion is linguistically impossible. The author of Matthew once again catches and fixes Mark's error by switching to a different language.
That's not what Matthew does. Matthew.
That's your opinion, Mike. I would agree with Paul here. Like, I think Matthew and Luke do a lot of correcting to Mark. They do a lot of that. Okay, and I think it's very evident that that's what they do.
It includes but well, then why does Matthew include the fact that they think he's calling out to Elijah? Matthew 27. Let me pull that up.
You can pull up Matthew, but Matthew is the fixed version. The problematic version is Mark.
Eloi,
and at 3 in the afternoon,
Eli.
Jesus called out in a loud voice, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? When some of those standing there heard this, they said, listen, he's calling Elijah. You can say it's merely chronological if you want, but it sure looks like cause and effect to me and most scholars.
Now, from the 6th hour, there was darkness over the land till the 9th hour, and about the 9th hour, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That is, my God, why have you forsaken me? Some of the bystanders hearing this said, this man is calling to Elijah.
The NIV and most other English translations are more straightforward. When some of those standing there heard this, they said, he's calling Elijah. The point stands in either translation. When people heard X, they did Y, is an inference of causation, because we're talking about the explicit reactions of agents. It can be purely temporal, but that's not the natural reading. Also, he's calling Elijah is clearly meant to be an explanation of what Jesus said. What makes no sense would be to posit Jesus saying something, a crowd immediately saying something that sounds like an interpretation, and those two things not being connected at all.
What?
Yes, like I'm sorry, even when I was a Christian, I would have read that as an explanation of what Jesus said. In fact, a lot of biblical scholars would agree with that assessment. And so you're basically trying to say that there's a separation here. On what basis do you say there's a separation when they immediately follow each other? Like, I'm sorry, like the people standing there are if only your tentacles could contort like his logic. Thank you, Cranky. But yes, because it's like Matthew corrects the Eloi to Eli. Okay, he takes the O out, basically. Like, I'm sure it's not that way in Aramaic. Aramaic is kind of completely different. Matthew corrects the mispronunciation. Okay, now if you're a fundamentalist Christian, you can't have any corrections like that. Like, you can't have Matthew correcting Mark, but Matthew and Luke correct Mark, change Mark. Like, they quote Mark prolifically, but they change him, they correct him. This is the stuff that caused me to go, like, maybe these gospel thingies aren't exactly inspired by God, because it seems like a God that's omniscient and omnipotent would inspire something that was consistent, but there is no consistency. So, logic contortionist, yes. Still don't, but I honestly, Evan, I've got one donation so far from Cranky. So got 4 to go. No bunny hat, nothing. I know I keep extending the stream. So there we go. Apparently, well, you think that one worked? Okay, good. I hope you stop sneezing. I was going to make a joke about 13, because then you should probably have stopped, because that's the same number as the Fang Dammits, but you kind of went beyond the Fang Dammits. So as I would expect the Goblin Queen, the Laughing Witch, our Lord Daps, to go past. So there we go. Good to see you back, Evan. But yes. But But yeah, like I'm sorry, Mike. Like there's Bible scholars that are Bible believing Christians that would look at that as an explanation. And the problem with difference between Mark and Matthew is Matthew corrects Mark. He makes a corrective. Or you have an enormous trip to the water closet. You had to get the evil out. Okay, there we go. Well, I thought 13 would have been great if you'd stopped right there. More revelation from Fangs. The exact same number as the Fang dammits. What more proof do you need that Fangs is the true religion? He's the true God. The rest of them are all false.
Where on earth do we get this idea that the authors, the gospel authors, think they're confusing these? Just because they think he's calling out to Elijah, the authors are not saying the people think he's calling out to Elijah because he said this phrase up here. That's
I'm sorry, dude. You're going against not just Paulogia here. You're going against a lot of biblical scholars who are all Christians. Why would it be anything else? I'm sorry, dog. Like, they follow right from each other. Like, and Matthew fixes it. Okay, Matthew's. Oh yes, it's a prime number, so it's prime evil. Okay, we can go with that. But yeah, but like, because they are, and anybody who reads the text would automatically assume that. Like Christians have assumed that for literally hundreds of years in their interpretation. Go read some commentaries on this passage. I have. And they all talk about this Eloi thing being a reference to Elijah. And the problem is in Aramaic, Eloi doesn't sound anything like Elijah. Okay, but Eli does. It's like, I'm sorry, Mike, but I think a lot of people reading that text would assume that they go together, that the authors both put them together. And I'm sorry to break the news to you, but Matthew corrected Mark's grammar. Or Fangs compels you. I hate to break the news to you, Mike Jones. Like these gospel thingies, they're written by human beings, and human beings make mistakes. They're not inspired by God. There were people writing stories about Jesus, and one of them made a mistake, and the other one fixed it. Oh my gosh.
conjecture not supported by the text anywhere.
It is absolutely
so, like, this is just something
by the fact that they're right next to each other, Mike.
Personally, I got that idea from every commentary I've ever referenced.
Correct.
From
Thank you.
scholars you like, Craig Evans, Mike Licona, Adela Collins, Craig Keener, Dale Allison, along with Rendell Helms, W.D. Davies, Joel Marcus, Clifton Black, just to name a few. Go take it up with them.
This is a false cause.
Correct. Go take it up with all the commentaries I've ever read on this passage, Mike. Because if you want to assume that they don't go together, that's your business. But there's a shit ton of Christian scholarship that says they do go together. You might want to check with your friends and the people on your side, Mike, before you make this criticism again. Like, come on, man. I'm cranky. I got it. I got you. So, we're going again. 18. Maybe we'll get some multiple of 13. There we go. I don't want you to go that far though. I hope you get over this, whatever you're allergic to. But thanks, Mike. Thanks, Evan. Oh yeah. All right. So there we go. But yes, thank you very much. Oh, Mike, you're not arguing with Paul at this point. You're arguing with half the Christian commentators on this text, if not more. Sorry, bro.
In effect, there's nothing in the text that suggests the reason they thought he was calling out to Elijah is because he said, Eli, Eli.
You're welcome to your pet interpretation, but there absolutely is something in the text to at least suggest cause and effect of what Jesus said and the crowd's interpretation of those words. And one final example where Mike was factually incorrect in his original video, and for unclear reasons, replayed me explaining that he was wrong.
Additionally, in John, which was likely written after 70 AD, we see a lack of passages painting Romans in a positive light.
Yeah.
Which we would expect if the Christians no longer wish to portray Roman authority figures well.
This is just factually wrong. John has the most extended Pilate scene of any gospel, with Pilate repeatedly declaring Jesus was not guilty, and the Jewish leaders manipulating him into execution. Craig Keener said,
yes, like this is very surprising when I was listening to Mike Jones's 6-hour video for the first time, and I heard it, and I'm like, No, I've done Bible quizzing on John. John, of all the Gospels, I probably know John the best. And the writer of John is practically bending over backwards, kissing Pilate's ass. Like he's treating Pilate in a very positive light, and the Jewish leaders are the manipulative ones. And so I'm sorry, Jones. Mike, you're wrong. And Paul's right. You're just straight up wrong on that point.
As John goes to great lengths to emphasize that Pilate cooperated with Jesus' execution against his own preference. And this emphasis is understandable for apologetic reasons.
Or maybe he was just reporting what actually happened. Like, why is that not even an option on the table?
That can be on the table, which seems to me an admission that there are, indeed, passages in John showing Romans in a positive light, contra to your initial claim. All right, with the broad themes out of the way, let's zip through some of the remaining commentary in chronological fashion.
Okay. This is where the part I wanted to get to, because I'm going to try to give some of the areas that I had criticisms of the individual chapters in Mike's thing too. I don't want to spoil my own series on this, but I also, some of these highlights are very similar to some of the things I would say. And so I want to kind of back Paul on here and kind of give a little bit of a precursor of what I'm doing. So there we go. So yeah, like it's the thing about John and his portrayal of Pilate is the good guy. Like he's trying to get Jesus off. He's trying to get him out of there. And it's the Jewish leaders that are coming after him, which makes perfect sense in a gospel written where the Jews and the Gentile believers are starting to split up and starting to be antagonistic towards each other. Like now that the Christianity has become a more Gentile movement, they want to start blaming the Jews for Jesus's crucifixion. And that's exactly the way John portrays it. And straight up, Mike Jones gets it wrong. And Paul called him out on it being wrong. And Mike is just like, why is it the option of he's just historically reporting things? Like, no, dude, that's the problem. So I thought, the original plan was 3 volumes without the 3rd volume that we actually have in it. He was convinced to do that. The 4th volume, as I understand it, I think I've already read this, but the 4th volume of Habermas's thing is supposed to be on theology and practice. So my curiosity there, Case, is he going to start saying that they should do more presuppositional apologetics because I've proven the resurrection with medical facts? I just want to see him say something like that. So, yeah. Is he trying to do a joke, but he is the joke? Yes. I think probably both. Oh, my gosh. This is the Inception review of a review of a review of a debate. Yes, it is. So there we go. It matters, Mark. All those could be trying to be history, but then it's not a. Well, and I'm going to say something here in a bit, like I am. So, like, yes. Yeah, so there we go. I'm kind of waiting. That's why I have Earl, like, Case, I just want to let you know I have Earl warming up all the Habermas stuff. So, because I don't know where it's going. I have literally thought about ordering this book as well, because I am, as a former minister and somebody who does a lot of counter apologetics, I want to know what his recommendations to the church are as far as ministry and practice based on his case for the resurrection, which he thinks he's won. I am very, very curious about what Habermas is going there. Like the rubber meets the road is where I tend to live when it comes to this stuff. And I want to know what Habermas is recommending. So there we go. Don't do it. Okay. Don't do that, Ed. Don't touch the button. Oh, I am a follower of Fangs, Evan. I'm going to touch the button. All right, so here we go. This is where we do some chapter by chapter stuff where Mike Jones defends himself against some Apologia's stuff. So, so there we go.
It's basically Paulogia basically had a long-winded response of just saying, I'm not convinced. That was really
Okay, Mike, you saying anything is long-winded is just a fucking joke at this point. You did a 6-hour plus video, and you're going to complain about somebody else being long-winded? And this response is 4.5 hours. You want to complain about somebody else being long-winded? Come on, man.
Much it.
Why would it need to be any more than that, according to Mike?
What would be the point of me doing the 6-hour series if I thought this? Like, I'm clearly trying to show they're reliable.
If Mike is trying to show that the Gospels are reliable, and I'm not convinced, then he hasn't succeeded, at least not with me, and that would be entirely fair and sufficient commentary.
So here's the first video, ladies and gentlemen. What are the Gospels? I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I think Paul is kind of missing the point of this video.
Was the point that I'm right and the genre is unrelated to truth value?
I agree with some of the criticisms as I kind of like strongly implied in the video. When I say, like, look, I talked with you about this, Than. When I say they're Greco-Roman biographies and you go, well, I hold to Lydia McGrew's reportage model.
Yes, I enjoyed being able to quote Lydia McGrew so extensively disagreeing with you.
When I talk
Yeah. Okay, there we go.
about ancient genres, I'm using them pretty loosely. Like, yeah, because there wasn't like...
Oh, bullshit, Mike. I've watched that chapter. I've watched it 5 times now. You make a big deal about this being Greco-Roman biographies. You absolutely make a big deal. You literally have a quotation in there. Is because of their Greco-Roman biographies, they're not subject to legendary development. They're not subject to this. And I'm like, bullshit. Like, you literally make this whole, because they're Greco-Roman biographies, their history, so therefore they can't have any mythology in them. Sorry, you make that claim. That's a pretty substantial claim. To sit there and suddenly downplay this first chapter, dude, did you even watch your damn first chapter? Did I do a good job? Did I do that? Okay, fair enough. I was trying to go for monotone, but I have a hard time doing monotones. They're hard. Dude, did you even watch your first chapter? Because I've watched it several times. You make a big deal out of this. You go on and on for 27 minutes about how this is Greco-Roman biographies. If you didn't do that for a reason, why didn't you just take that chapter out? Like, come on, bro. Richard C. Miller et al. And he has kills on this. Dude, he makes a big deal out of this chapter, and for him to suddenly downplay it just pisses me off. Like, that's just dishonest. Now I'm going to here's my spoiler for my first chapter review. I don't think it means a bit of difference about historical reliability. There's plenty of Greco-Roman biographies that are not about Jesus that we question their historical reliability on various claims. Like, there is Greco-Roman biographies on Alexander the Great, for instance. And there are some claims in that Greco-Roman biography that are probably bullshit. Okay. They're written by somebody who is a big fan, probably, and they embellished. And I hate to say it, that's what I think the Gospels are, that maybe there was a historical guy named Jesus, but a whole bunch of people embellished. And, and unfortunately, we're living with the context of that today. So employs several key themes across his narrative to present a targeted defense of the early Church of Roman society. Yes, exactly. And that's kind of the point. Like, it's Luke, John does that. Like, the only one that really doesn't maybe do that is Mark, but Mark is so low key about it. Yeah, Zeus wasn't Alexander's dad. I hate to break the news to you. I was a bigger fan of Norse mythology. I don't think Ragnar Lothbrok had Odin as one of his ancestors. I don't think that either. Ragnar Lothbrok, that didn't happen. But Zeus wasn't Alexander's dad. Like, there are Greco-Roman biographies that, yes, stuff like that, we kind of say that's probably not historical. Okay. And so when Mike Jones says there's also legendary development in some of these biographies about Alexander, about some of the shit he did, where, yeah, he did this thing, but then these Greco-Roman biographies make it even more of a thing and all this impact and all this shit and just make it bigger. That's legendary development. So when Mike Jones says there's no way there could be legendary development in this, come on, man. Sorry, you made a big deal out of that. You did that whole chapter for one reason, and you wanted to put it into Greco-Roman biography so it sounds more historical and less like a novel, and that's all you wanted to do it. Now, my own studies on this first chapter have kind of inspired me to kind of look at it from a different way, and Ed may go back into academia a little bit here for a bit to write a couple papers maybe, but I'm looking at, okay, these gospels all come from geographical traditions, and they had other of these pseudo gospels, non-canonical gospels floating around them. How do they influence each other? And so I know that that's going to make the gospel sound very human. But there we go. Political and Luke goes all his way to demonstrate that neither Jesus nor his followers are guilty of sedition. Yeah, like this is all the kind of the case against Jones, because Jones is like, oh, they had to be written early because they backed the Jews more than the Romans. They're always attacking the Romans. No, they don't. It's quite the opposite. So legal defense for Paul's trial, and it's possible. Maybe. Framing Christianity as a lawful sect under Roman law. Yeah, like Beck, what you're pointing out is everything that kind of Paulogia and me and everybody else is pointing out is like Jones is completely wrong. I'm sorry, John, Luke, Matthew, all are written later because that reflects the attitude of the church at the time, is a big good case. Yes. Yeah, he wants them to be written earlier. And so he has to make that case, but he's just flat out wrong. Okay. So, but yeah, like this has been the discussion since the beginning. Like there's no way you can get past the fact that the gospel writers kind of kiss the ass of the Romans quite a bit, because they're all Gentile believers by that time, and the Jews have gone back into their Judaism. That's kind of why Hebrews is written. So yeah, he has the polar opposite take on it. Yes. Like, it's like he doesn't understand that he's just straight up wrong. Like he's just wrong. Now, as far as chapter 1 in the Greco-Roman biographies, I agree with Paul. I don't think it makes a flipping bit of difference as to whether they're historically reliable or not. And the fact that Mike Jones even includes this as part of his argument, he should probably just left it out. Like, it's irrelevant to whether they're historically reliable. It was just weird to me.
These weren't cataloged in the ancient world. Like these are modern categories from scholars. So obviously, if someone's writing a biography, they're going to be loosely in that genre, but that doesn't mean they stuck to that so strictly.
So you agree with my conclusion. This is a major reason why genre identification is not very informative. And from the same book from Keener that Mike has been quoting throughout, genres are useful for classifying similar works. They are not templates to which the writers must adhere. That is, they are descriptive rather than prescriptive, an observation that immediately limits the degree to which we can project our expectations onto a given work, including any of the Gospels. And the many variables already noted preclude us from using the Gospel genre to pronounce decisions on the historical authenticity of all the reports a priori. Such an approach would run far beyond the evidence, given how far you're backtracking here.
I don't even think they're pure Greco-Roman biographies, because they clearly were Jewish also.
Right.
Like, so I'm just saying they generally fit in that category. So when
I'm sorry, Mike. When I listen to your video, that's not the way it comes off. If that's your actual view, is you don't think it's really fits that category, or I think what's happened here, Mike, is you got some pushback from your Christian friends about this idea of them being Greco-Roman biographies, and that somehow that automatically makes them magically like incapable of historical error. And now you're kind of backtracking, okay, on that idea, because you know it's full of shit. Okay, like people are trying to point out to you that this first chapter just doesn't prove a damn thing, and you could be very, very wrong. And this contention, like most scholars, like we go back to that most scholars argument earlier in the stream, the most scholars say like that they are Greco-Roman biographies. I'm sorry, I looked that up, and that's even contentious. Because from my perspective, when I look at the genre of the Gospels, I'm not looking at, when I talk about what is the genre of Gospels, okay, in general, you have to include the other 40 that are out there. And guess what, Mike? They don't always fit this Greco-Roman biography pattern. In fact, you might argue that the Gospels can take different genre forms. And so if you're not going to include all the Gospels, I think you have to kind of walk back that claim, Mike. And so, yeah, like this is kind of my point. Like he went all in on the 4 Gospels and he forgot there's like 40 other Gospels, Kurt. And that's the problem. Like there's a whole bunch more. And the gospel as a genre would be anything connected to the church that's probably connected to Jesus. That's the way I would define a gospel. Like the good news of Jesus Christ is kind of the Christian definition. And so if it's written about Jesus, connected with the Christian church at an earlier time in church history, it's probably a gospel, or will be acquainted as a gospel. It's a self-identified thing. It's where Christians identify a work as a gospel. Okay, within those Gospels, there are multiple different genres. Maybe you could say the 4 are written in a similar pattern to Greco-Roman biographies. Fine. I can even grant that. It doesn't make them historical. And so this whole first chapter, your whole point of your whole series and your whole big long magnum opus is to sit there and say, hey, this proves that this is all data point after data point of proving the gospel's historical reliability, but the genre of the gospels doesn't prove anything about historical reliability. It doesn't do that. So yes. Yeah, like he and I don't have a problem with that. It's just he needs, I think the reason he's walking this back is because there's a lot of Christian scholars that don't agree with him on this too. Like his majority claim that they're Greco-Roman. I think there's a little bit of pushback from the scholarly community in his own camp. And I don't think he realized that, because there's a lot of Christians that consider the gospel form of the 4 canonical gospels back to be unique. And he says in that first chapter that they're unique. And I'm like, that they're not unique, that they're just in the pattern of great light. I should rephrase that. What he says is they are not unique in the fact that they take the form of the Greco-Roman biography in that first chapter. And I'm like, no, I think there's a lot of Christians that still think that gospel literature, if you include all the gospels, is a unique type of literature connected to the church and Jesus. So I think that he probably, he immediately started to walk this back once Paul called him out on it. And so that kind of tells me he probably actually got some reviews from some Christians on his stuff. And yeah, so it's like he's back on, oh yeah, well, I know that, but hey, I mean, good to see you. Yeah. Can't quite read the lower bits. Jones, Christian Apologist on the YouTube channel, Inspired Infancy Gospel as a work of ancient legendary fics or folklore. Okay, so yes. But the problem is he's still got to deal with his connection to the church. People in the church loved it. Few say very fewer than one of them reported having read the whole Bible. Yeah, that's probably true. That's probably true. I made a point of reading half of it every year, slowly and methodically, when I was a Christian. So I've read it probably 15, 16 times through, but and of course prep for sermons, teachings, and all that stuff. I don't know how much of the Bible I read over and over and over again. Memorized good chunks of it too as a Bible quizzer. So, but yeah, I don't know. Parts of it are boring. I wouldn't recommend reading Leviticus unless you're interested in technical manuals of how people go to the bathroom. That's one thing.
You bring up stuff but they have more parallels to things in the Old Testament. I'm like, of course they would. Of course. Yeah. I'm not saying this is so rigid.
I'm indeed wondering what your point of this chapter was.
There were 2 main points of
Yes, me too. I want to know what the point of this. If you're trying to prove historical reliability of the gospel accounts, what the hell was the point of this chapter then? If you're going to walk it back that much, then what the hell is it? What's the point?
This video that Paul seemed to miss, which is that if you look at the argument Craig Keener makes, it's that we don't have any examples of biographies written about sages or persons within the lifetime of eyewitnesses that were fictional or intended to be fictional.
Yeah. I'm not a mythicist, and I don't think the Gospels are pure fiction. This point means nothing to me. Why would I address it?
And the second point was that how strictly the Gospels use their sources. Paul skipped over that entire section. This whole video was really a build up to that point.
That was your point? That has nothing to do with identifying genre. But okay, well, I agree that Matthew and Luke strictly use Mark. I'm even stronger than you on this point, because I think John also used these other Gospels as sources. This shapes my view on literary dependence, which comes up often. Why would I fight you on this? It doesn't help you.
Okay, so in this video, we're talking about who wrote the Gospels. And again, he ignores the main argument we use for traditional authorship, which is that there's multiple attestation across the entire empire. And it's not that
there's multiple attestation across the entire empire from mid-2nd century on. And that's a weakness because we don't have a chain of custody of this tradition going back any farther. So yeah, like probably my point in this video is like, dude, you're missing the fact that the gap of time, this is an argument from silence, but from a historical point of view, there's a gap here, which leads to the possibility that these 4 Gospels being Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John is a slightly later literary tradition of the church. So yeah, he's avoiding this fact. It's like, yes, the tradition is long and deep, but you got 100 plus year gap here before the tradition really even starts, and then another 100 years before it becomes entrenched. And so that's significant from a historical point of view. So, late? Okay, yeah, iron. Okay, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I guess I'd call that late too. But yeah, like it's a gap, like well over 100 years from the actual events. Or if you're going by the writings of the Gospels and say they're like, even if I were to use Jones's earlier things, now you have an even greater gap. This is where like the traditional time frame of a date of the Gospels doesn't work in their favor, because if it's early writing, like 50 BC, 50 AD or whatever, then now you have this even longer gap before we know Mark's written by Mark and even then, does Irenaeus actually connect like a quote or something from Matthew to what he's calling Matthew? Like, how do we don't know that John is actually Matthew or Matthew is Mark? Like, how is that there? Or is that just one of our assumptions? So like, yeah, so hey, Tilting, I'm still live. It's all right. I'm here. I'm trying to do some of these chapters. I'm probably going to do this one more time next Friday. I got other things to do on Tuesday, but I may do this next Friday and finish this up. But I don't see how he doesn't see how this is historically significant, because you could have a false tradition develop around these 4 Gospels when you start putting names on top of them to give them apostolic authority, but they're not the people that actually wrote them. And then by 180, Irenaeus of Lyons is like the first person where we see this tradition like appear. And then later on it gets fully developed. That's still a long time. Okay. I was just wondering because I couldn't remember like if Irenaeus does that. But okay, so if he's identifying Matthew as Matthew, Mark as Mark, Luke as Luke, okay, well, that's the first time we actually have that. And he could be just reiterating a start of a tradition that happened just 10 years before, for all we know. The point of what Paul and me and many other skeptics make at this point is, I don't know that the authorship is accurate, but he can't have that. Jones can't have that. He's got to have these things written by the right person right away and early. What he fails to mention to his audience throughout this video series of his and the longer 6-hour video is this gap. He doesn't point it out. He keeps saying it's early. It's like, what do you mean by early? Okay, like, what do you mean? Yeah, he needs to be certain, and I don't. Like, I can sit there and say, I don't know if this tradition is legit or not, because I have a gap here, and we need to get some more information. So I can sit there and say, I don't know that this supports non-traditional authorship. I don't know that it supports traditional authorship. This gap of time leaves me a problem. I can say I don't know. The conservative Christian, the evangelical Christian cannot say that. They have to be certain. They have to be confident to be an apologist. So this is where he's being an apologist and not necessarily somebody honestly assessing the data and being honest with his audience either.
They're all copying one another. Actually, he gets to this in a minute. I'll correct myself.
Indeed, I did.
You have multiple attestation, and it's clear they're not just copying the same tradition because they disagree about the order the Gospels were written in. Clement of Alexandria thinks Matthew and Luke were written before Mark, but Irenaeus seems to order them Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They disagree about where the Gospels were written.
That's the live stream.
And yes, we still disagree with this to this day. Like there's still a disagreement on who wrote first or what. What is becoming very, very clear, though, to most scholars that are looking at this objectively, okay, that are saying, listen, I don't have an axe to grind one way or the other. There's a few scholars out there like that. They're saying, well, 70 AD to 100 seems more reasonable than any other answer so far. But Mike doesn't want to do that. Like he has to jump it back further into the first century so that they're eyewitness accounts. And so he can't accept it. But yes, we still argue about this as who wrote first. Now, for me, I think the most obvious, simple Occam razor answer is that Matthew and Luke used Mark as a source because you don't see quotes from Luke or Matthew or John in Mark. Like, you just don't see it. But you do see Matthew and Luke quoting Mark extensively. So it's like, to me, that's a more logical way to go, a more logical path. I don't think, though, that Matthew and Luke knew about each other's writing because I think they were writing about the same time in two different geographies, which makes a lot more sense to me. Like Matthew, as I recall, and I could be wrong about this, but Matthew is writing in I think most people believe he wrote in Palestine, and Luke is more of a Western tradition, far out west, more towards Rome. So, you get two people that are using Mark as a source. They're using some other things that are sources, maybe some quotations that everybody knew or multiple common sources by that time. And they're both writing, and then they inject their own shit that's independent of each other. And that makes much more sense to me. And then John comes along, and because he knows the context of the synoptics, that's why he avoids so much of what they talk about and talks about other stories of Jesus. So it's like, and they're also in a different geographic location. So it's like, it's almost like Christianity already had its denominations about Jesus already. So I don't know. Yeah, so much for reasoned defense of their faith. Yes, they just don't have it. Fanatical lawyer for religion talk about breeding ground for bad behavior and thinking. Yes, so it's like we still have this argument. Like to this day, we're still arguing about what wrote first. The more common view is that it's Mark, then Matthew and Luke writing after Mark, using Mark, and doing it in separate geographical locations. That's why they don't overlap as much as you'd think they should, although they do seem to have a common source where they quote, like some of the teachings of Jesus seem to have a common source. And then John writing later when the theology is much more established. So there you go.
Version. I think he expressed it more strongly in the pre-stream interview.
Now, here's an argument I want to make, and I've made it before. They all disagree about when the Gospels were written, order they were written in, who was present there. It's always, but they all agree on one fact: it was Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Given the fact that they have different origin stories, but they still agree on that key fact, that's corroborating evidence. So they're not all just copying each other. Like they're not all just copying Papias, for example. Right. They're getting it from different lines that all agree on that core fact.
I will interject here. They also could be all referencing a meta tradition by that time, and they don't really know. And so they're just there's a tradition that developed early about Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Doesn't mean it's correct, but it does mean that it was an overriding tradition. So that's not a fact. You could say, I agree with you, Liz. I don't think that that's necessarily a fact either. But even if I acknowledge it as a fact, doesn't mean that quote unquote fact of what they all believed is true. Like, just because the majority of people believe it doesn't mean that that's exactly the case. And I'm sorry, there's a lot of internal evidence that speaks against traditional authorship. So, I mean, the aforementioned, we mentioned it earlier in the stream, of Matthew seems to just copy Mark's. Like, if Matthew is written by the tax collector, Matthew is a disciple of Jesus, his origin story is really weird because he just copies Mark. So it's like, it's not hard, concrete evidence, but it's sure. So it's just really weird. Mike Jones, the rapper Mike Jones, the excuse is just okay. It's like listen to a comics fan who really hasn't done their homework. Yeah, pretty much. Just so you know, Arch, my opinion of Mike Jones is he needs to go back to school, and he needs to, if he's going to talk biblical studies, he really needs to go back to school and get a biblical studies degree and study this stuff out a little bit longer, because he tends to open his mouth without really knowing what he's talking about. And that's when he gets in trouble. And then he gets incredulous that you call him on it. Like, I think all the butt hurt that Mike Jones and Than experienced after Paul's video was, how dare you ruin our flex? Because we had this flex of nobody ever addresses our data. Nobody ever does this. And then finally somebody did. And oh no, it's Paulogia. And oh no, we got to discredit this stuff because we had this flex. Yeah, Mike open mouth and server. Now Mike Jones opens mouth and readjusts his foot that's still in his mouth. Yes. So, but yeah, like, I think that's what the problem is with Mike Jones, is he got all mad here because somebody finally addressed his stuff, and he had always been able to go out to his crowds and people and say, nobody ever addresses our data points about the historical reliability of the Gospels. He can't say that anymore. Somebody has. And there's probably going to be another somebody in me. And I don't know, that some may have inspired some other people to write some stuff about this. And, you know, it's like, sorry, Mike, you're not as ironclad as you wish. And, you know, I've given my advice to Mike Jones before. Go back and do a little bit more work. Make sure you're steel manning your opponent's arguments, because you don't do that very well. And maybe, just maybe, just maybe, you know, develop a thicker skin. Like, in the world of biblical studies, like, this is not a safe space. Like, okay, this is not where everybody's ideas are going to be. Like, dude, you're going to get pushback, and you should welcome it. And you should welcome it in the right frame of mind. My whole problem with your whole reaction to what Paul did here, and I think what Paul's reaction to is, it's like, dude, you didn't really, Paul basically says bet, you know, like, yeah, there you go. There's some stuff. But yeah, like, there are people that are, you know, pushing back on Mike, and Mike thinks it's horrible that they're doing so. It's like, dude, if you're going to be in scholarship of any type, people are going to push back against your ideas. It's not freaking personal. Like, quit making it personal. This wasn't personal. Paul just like, okay, if you're trying to convince me of the historical reliability, this is why I have a problem with it. And instead of Mike Jones going, oh, okay, well, let's see what good points I think he has. Let's address his points. Nope. Paulogia is an asshole. He's a jerk. He's a liar. You know, you went to all the ad hominem things that you could go through about Paul. You misrepresented his positions. You didn't steel man him at all. And you completely misrepresented what he was trying to do. And it's like, dude, would you please develop some skin that's a little thicker here? Because people are going to push back against your ideas in any field you go into. Like, is this a characteristic of a philosophy degree? Where philosophers like, oh, that's just a very interesting idea. And I don't know. Your idea is really good. That guy's idea is really good. This guy's idea is really good. And so you just stand around and circle jerk your navel gazing? Or is that what this is about? Because I tell you, in the rest of scholarship outside of philosophy, you get pushback. You get people taking on your ideas, and you should welcome that. You seem thick as skin. Like, it's like, dude, I don't know. Like, I'm sorry, Mike, but, people are going to push back on this. I'm going to be pushing back against you. I think your first chapter is irrelevant. Okay, and you're kind of seeing the light on that. I think some of your authorship questions are irrelevant. So it's okay. See you later, Triple E. I get it. But I get it. Don't disrespect me. People ask me why I deal with these guys. If they weren't so goddamn popular, I wouldn't. But Inspired Philosophy as a channel has like 554,000 subscribers. I got like 1% of that. There are tons of, he gets invited onto shows like Myth Vision. He gets invited, like people invite him to shit. Okay. And if he wasn't so goddamn popular, I wouldn't even talk about it. Like there's tons of apologists out there that are, have same size channels as mine or smaller, and I don't bother with them. Like, okay. But it's these guys that are supposedly the heavyweight apologists, and they screw up so much, but nobody points it out. And so you end up getting people that are just like buying into this all this stuff. Well, I got news for you. Yeah, I don't understand it either. He is annoying, but to some Christians, he's the bee's knees, Elizabeth. Like he's the best. Like, oh, it's not a problem, Triple E. Oh. Yeah, like it's not a. Academia is where you take your ideas, you try to back them up with as much data as you can, and then somebody else maybe in a related field or slightly unrelated field is going, well, I got data that kind of contradicts that. You should be welcoming that shit. Like if you're really an academic, you develop a little humility and you welcome criticism and take it in the right frame of mind so that you can make your ideas, make what you think is true better. But Mike looks at it as, I've proven this point, prove me wrong. And then when somebody comes along and tries to do that, he gets butthurt. And it's like, dude, grow the fuck up. Okay, like, come on. Like, look at my battle, okay. Yeah. Trump having charisma. He doesn't have charisma anymore. He may, when he was younger, he did have a little bit, but he's outgrown it. But yeah, like I just don't understand. Mike just seems to have this problem with pushback, and it's like, dude, if you're going to be in biblical studies in particular, like I'm sorry, because you're dealing with humanities, like biblical studies and all that stuff, it's going to be contentious because there's a lot of opinion here and not as much facts as we would like. It's not like physics, like, where if somebody has a contention with somebody's idea, you can grab the math and then go do some testing and prove them wrong. It's not like that at all. Like when we deal with historical questions, we put a probability to things and it's never 100%. It's just too problematic. In that respect, like history as a study in and of itself deals in probabilities. It doesn't deal in certainties. And the problem with the apologist is you got to preach certainty to your crowd. And Mike is a living testimony to that. Like he's trying to be something he is just not qualified for. And, and it shows. And I'm just adding my academic creds to Paulogia's stuff because I've agreed with Paulogia throughout this video most of the time. And it's because that's where a lot of the scholarly academia is at in the critical side of things. And for Mike to get all upset about this, like this is just problematic. So it's like, it's bad for them. Apologists are embarrassed to academia and irrelevant to it. The surest sign apologists and apologetics can't stand up to scrutiny, shown in that they can't stand any scrutiny. Yes, they don't want their ideas examined. If you really feel you have the truth, if you really feel your data is solid, like this is my big bitch with Habermas and why I laugh at him so much. If your 90% claim is true, publish the data on it. Give it to us. As Michael Alter said, give us something. You haven't given us anything. Why is that? Because he knows that the moment Habermas does that and actually publishes his data, somebody's going to criticize it, and he doesn't want it to be criticized. And that's the real problem. So it's just bad. You know, any credentials, yes. Christian apologies ought to be easier to tell apart. There shouldn't be any overlap. It gives a decent. Yes. Yeah, they hate being scrutinized. And that's what's sad. Like with Habermas, it was just like, dude, if this is true, if 90% of scholarship around the world backs up these minimal facts, this is your big selling point. Provide the data. The data isn't going to hurt you. But your continued refusal to present the data tells me something. It is going to hurt you because somebody's going to scrutinize it. Somebody's going to question it. And the first time we ever got close to that is the third volume of his magnum opus. And Paul comes out there, does a little quick, stuff. And then Michael Alter comes along and gives us more details and says why this is the case. The fact that they leave out Arabic scholars, and all this other stuff. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, yeah, show us the data, Gary. Oh, I'm not going to do that. But you just trust me, bro. And this is the problem. In academia, trust me, bro, doesn't work. Vibes and feelings die at the altar of peer review. I'm sorry, they just do. And apologists want to dwell in this realm where they can make these statements and not be subject to peer review. And it drives me nuts. So, yeah, like in this video, he admits where he made a few mistakes. And I think that's part of the honestly, Dragon Rider, I think that's probably more why he wanted to say this. Like, yeah, I made a few mistakes. Here they are. And I think that probably motivated Paul. I've watched Paul for a long time. It probably motivated him more than just pointing out that Mike Jones was wrong about his criticism. So, but yes, it's like, that's my problem. Like, there's just, I don't know. And I'm probably going to stop here tonight, guys. I'm starting to get a little tired and hungry, but at this point, I just want to point out that my problem, this is such a great example of what apologists do. They want to dump all this stuff on their congregants without any fact checking. And then when they do get fact checked, their only response is, well, my fact checker is an asshole. My fact checker is a liar. They can't go through Paul's point by point, just sit down and do that kind of thing. They can't do that. They have to push back. Like they're sitting there talking about Paul poisoning the well and gaslighting. I'm like, dude, you're doing the same shit. Oh, he loves consensus scholarship when it supports his point. And, when he wants to do some tangential view, he does that instead. And it's like, there's no consistency. I'm like, dude, I can literally go through your entire 6-hour video and do that where you're doing it. Like, it's like, do you not have any self-awareness that you yourself do these shit? So, yeah. So, actually, it's 9:45, actually. I live at Eastern Standard Time for Michigan. You have to go, I think it's Gary, Indiana, somewhere in there. The timeline is. So, Gary, Indiana, about halfway through the UP. So, but yeah. All right. But thanks everybody for being here. I think I've got enough material here that I think I'll probably finish. I want to finish up the rest of the chapters. And there's also some stuff that Paul says that I think are very important to the conversation about why he doesn't believe and why I don't believe and why this stuff wasn't convincing to us. And that's really kind of the climax of Paul's video here. And I want to talk about that as well. So probably next Friday, we'll pick this up and we'll call it good for tonight. But thank you very much for being here. Thank you for all of this. My whole point has been when I do these reactions to what Paul does, a lot of times people criticize him for not having academic creds. Well, what do you do with somebody with academic creds like myself? My master's degree, but I have some academic. Doesn't mean you should just take what I say as the gospel. Please don't do that. You can still question everything I say, and you can still look at it. And if you think I'm wrong, you can always tell me, and I'll listen to what you have to say. But I want to let people know that it's not just Paul who thinks these things. It's actual academics. Some of us also think these things. Okay, and that's the point. So there you go. Yeah, yeah. You always have to have the I don't know, but yeah, that's kind of what my whole point with this is. It's like I really think the pushback against apologists still needs to continue because I think they're getting desperate. They've been getting desperate more and more. So, but yes, you don't take the Gospels as the gospel either. That's good. They're a brilliant tumble. A great song. Yes, go blue. Go blue. We're getting into that season. All right. Thanks, everybody, for stopping by. Special thanks to Cranky and Evan. I don't know if they're still here, but I do want to thank them publicly in the video. Thanks for the donations. Keeps my... Actually, I'm going to have an announcement about that right now. I am going to pretty much eliminate ads from my streams altogether. So I'm going to be living purely on the donations and memberships to do my streaming. Ad revenue just has become really paltry anyway, and I would just soon have those of you that love this channel and support it. So if you watch the stream, you'll notice there's no ads because I haven't turned them on, and I'm not going to. I'm going to probably save that for my videos when I do them, so there'll still be ads on those. But I think I'm going to stream ad-free and trust that all of you will support that and be good with that. So that's that. So thanks to those two guys. Appreciate all of you being here. May Fangs nibble on all of your hearts. May he draw himself closer to you with his sharp, pointy teeth and purify all of your vegetables from religious corruption with those same pointy teeth. If you need a religion that gives you warm fuzzies, the Fluffle of Fangs is it. All you have to do in our religion is look into the deep eyes of Fangs, the godlet Fangs, and you will get all the warm fuzzies you will ever need from any religion that you could ever want. If you need a religious ritual in your life, just circumcise a carrot and leave it upon top of your stash. Maybe Fangs will take the carrot instead of the stash, or maybe he'll take both, or maybe he'll just take the stash anyway. The thing about it is, like all religious rituals, results vary. Results absolutely do vary. Make sure you're watching out for the lies and the vibes of the apologists, and make sure you really watch out for those apologists like Low Bar Bill who want to turn that bar right into hell. Drop it right in there and get it that epistemological bar so low. Make sure you resist those folks. And also watch out for Judge Fangs. Like, he's always looking for legal means to steal your stash, so make sure you do that. And of course, always look out for those precept opossums. They're everywhere. They're everywhere. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. As always, live your best life. You only get one go around it, then it's over. So you want to make sure you take all your time, money, opportunities, give them to yourself, the people you love and care for, and to make this a better world. You'll be happier if you do. And don't waste them on the trappings of religion and faith, because that's a dead end. I speak from experience. As always, folks, thanks for stopping by. I'll see all of you Monday when we'll do another fireside chat on Monday. In the meantime, have a great weekend and enjoy the rest of your day. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the end to find out how you can support the channel better. Of course, there's always the normal notions of just hitting that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit your notification bell, and share the video with your friends and family that you think would be interested. That's always very appreciated. If you want to support the channel in a more tangible way, there's several options. You can super chat or super thanks in the comments or during a stream. Those are always very welcome. But you also can become a member of the channel. Members have certain perks like getting the videos early, things like that. They also have some good custom emojis during chat. So all of these things are good benefits to members, but they also support this channel and its work to continue to normalize atheism and deconversion, for which I'm very appreciative. It keeps me going, and it keeps me as a content creator being able to do more and more as a content creator. So if you choose those methods of support, thank you very much. And I appreciate you once again for staying to the end and listening to other ways that you can support the channel. Appreciate it. Thanks, and I'll catch you next time.